Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this workshop. It's a public workshop for CODC, and a reminder, of course, and a welcome to people that we do have online. A reminder to councillors that we do have members of the community, and we also have Deputy Mayor Neil Gillespie online. I'll begin with Karakia. Tuia te tika, tuia te pono, tuia te araha, ke te ao marama. Weave what is right, weave what is true, weave with love to the world of enlightenment. And we begin today, World of Enlightenment, with council priorities. So enlighten us, Saskia.
Good morning, Councillor. Just take a quick moment just to quickly go through a very familiar diagram that you have seen before. So this is the program, and Wayne has got it also on PowerPoint for those on Teams. As you're well aware, you'll see it all in your diary. We've got quite a few workshops coming up where we're going to explore the direction on budget. So what we're going to do over the next, particularly today and on the 30th of September, is to get direction from you. We will then, on the budgets, then we're going to start going into some of the on the policy work. Paul and I are really keen to have a good chat with you around like the rating, policy differentials, all of that kind of stuff that we haven't addressed in quite some time. So that'll be workshop 5. We have the museum work coming back in October as well, and then we'll start towards the end of the year, starting to talk about obviously consultation items. We will have a full budget workshop, so following your direction over the next few workshops as we refine those numbers, they will come back to you, and then there will obviously be the formal papers that will come next year. We also, as per normal, there'll be quite a lot of oversight of this program by the Audit and Risk Committee under the delegations. They do delegation on behalf of council to keep an eye on the progress of the program. So we'll make sure that Bruce Robertson and the committee are well informed. They do see all the policy work before it comes to you, so we'll make sure that gets included. So you will see this at every key meeting we have, just how we're tracking, just to keep ourselves on track. Any questions at this point on our proposed timeline?
Yeah, I do. Saskia, the 15th of October in the top right-hand corner, I've got nothing in my diary that day, but I'm on leave, so I might have removed it, but there's not a workshop, and I don't think there's a meeting, so. What day is that? 15th of October. There is.
Yeah.
Is it a workshop?
Yeah.
So.
And there's the
15th of October right next to it. I was going to say, I can't see. I'll shut up. Yeah, I'm not here.
Yes.
I'm not here, so that's what it's not. Anybody else? I need a forum for workshops today.
Still the thing on the event, it's decision day for the student.
Usually get to
There is a meeting that day. That's
Yeah,
what it
it's
is.
a short meeting and it's a workshop.
That's right. So if it's put in. Or I put my, after I put my name. But then you come to the.
No, it's only me.
Yeah, that's good. Hello?
And as needed, as we go through, if there's additional work that you require us to do on certain topics, it might be that we need to schedule in additional workshops, but we'll do that as we have the position from you as we look through. Okay, so we are going to hand over now to the lovely Rebecca and Paula, who are going to talk to us about community outcomes, which we started a conversation a little while ago, and then a bit of a conversation around priorities for this LPP and getting a bit of a steer from you in that direction. So Rebecca.
Thanks, thanks, Wayne. So councillors will recall that we came to there was a workshop at the council meeting, or the workshop session on the 31st of July, where we talked about the district vision project that's Shaping Tomorrow Together, the results of that survey work, and we started to talk about community outcomes.
Oh, sorry.
So Norm, because it's a council workshop, I've asked community people to not sit at the table. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so this is the next step from there, really. So from that workshop, we have had a look at our what are the community outcomes, what might they look like for this LTP? And you'll see, I flicked it out briefly sorry, not briefly, I sent it out last night for any of you that might have had an opportunity to have a look before today. But just before we get to those, I wanted to just set the scene a little really, because we're in this very, well, I was going to say unique political environment, but it's not very unique. And as you'll see up on the board, the NGOZL calls the purpose statement in local government as the yo-yo clause, because it's the wellbeing's go in, go out, go in, go out. And it's then figuring out for Central Otago District Council, what is council's role and how do we have that conversation as part of next year's long-term plan. And so part of this presentation, I've included data from this year's ROS, which hasn't been to council yet. It's aiming for October, I think. So it will be, the full ROS results will be at the October meeting, but there's a section on there about priorities and also in this year's annual plan consultation, we asked about priorities. And then, of course, the district vision was that bigger picture where we had around 500 people saying, well, what do they want for the future of Central Otago? So this is really to try and help you as you entering all these conversations about budgets in this tight fiscal environment, what our community wants for its future. And so that's really what the session is about. Next slide, please. Anything else on?
Just want to go to that first bullet point. And talk.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the first bullet point is what is council's role and how do we have that as part of next year's conversation? And you'll see in italics there, we've got to support our district to enable a safe, healthy and thriving community and environment. Where that statement has come from is a result of the district vision work. So after we had the workshop with councillors, we had a all of staff session on the Friday, on the 1st of August, where we had a similar conversation about the district vision, but we had a conversation with the whole team about what is our role? What is Central Otago's district role as the operational arm of the organisation? And we, so all staff workshopped that and it sort of got massaged, and then there was a session with the executive team. Oh, how long ago would that been? 3 or 4 weeks ago. And the report has just come through. It hasn't been, we've only just received the report. It hasn't been finalised yet, but the statement that came out is the mission or for CODC is to support our communities to enable a safe, healthy and thriving community environment. So I thought it was just a really nice tie and for that district vision work back into remembering why we exist.
If you'll recall it in your LTP, you don't actually have a statement. What you have is the regional identity. And so you don't have to answer this now, but if you are of a mind to, to put something in there that represents what you view councillors as the role of council, the LTP is the place to put it. At the moment, you've delegated that. We've sort of, we just use regional identity statement.
Thank you, Wayne. So this is from the, this is a cut and paste directly out of the annual plan consultation feedback. We said, what do you think council's priority should be? The top one, of course, is don't increase rates. And then you've got different activities that council is involved in. Now, some of this is, all of this data is topical, right? It's dependent on what's happening at the time that the question is asked. And so it's of some use, but it's only of some use. And of course, the numbers were the numbers. So it's probably less, I don't know whether you can say it's to affect the community, but it is the feedback we got as part of the annual plan. The next one, please, Wayne, is residents' opinion survey. So these are the priorities that came through from this year's residents' opinion that will be coming to council in October. So the top table is this year's priorities, which you can read what they are. And I've included the table that's always included, which is how does that compare to the last 5 years? Because I thought that gave you a good idea to see where priorities are slightly shifting or not. And the top 5 tend to be fairly static. And And next slide, please, Wayne. I just picked two of the data sources from the district vision, one being, oh, I can't read there. Which of these factors would you say are most important to the wellbeing to you and your family / whānau? And so, some of these council contributes to, some of these councils are wholly responsible for, some of these councils not responsible for at all. But it's again, it's reflective of a quite a large sample of our community about what's important to them. And then the next, and then sorry, also on that slide, sorry Wayne, where the on the right hand side you've got the top 10 and top 3. So what's that showing you is what percentage of respondents put these items in their top 10 or in their top 3, because in the when you went through the survey it said which factors best describe your future for Central Otago. Now tell us your top 10, now pick your top 3. So people had to really narrow down their thinking, which is how those lists were created. Next slide, please. And then there was a question asked about how important are each of the following in bringing your vision for Central Otago to life. And this is where we're starting to see some more priorities. So it's having high quality infrastructure that's future proof. Now infrastructure was not defined, so it is very broad. It probably includes hospitals and educational services, but it certainly also includes roads and pipes. And so then you've got healthcare specifically mentioned, affordable housing, regeneration of the natural environment and so on in the list. So then, given all of that, and in the fiscal situation of the country, as you could say, what are council's priorities for the next 2 to 9 years? And 2 to 9 is because we've got this weird timed LTP. So next slide, please, Wayne. And so this, oh, no, before that list, here's the community outcomes, ta-da. Sorry, so the community outcomes have been written, these are draft, they'll come to count once we've got feedback from you today, these will come through in a report for proper decision-making process. But these have been written as a direct result of those processes that I've explained today. And so it's yeah. I've included also in the opening statement of that bolded piece, that LTPs have to describe the community outcomes they seek for the district. That's a piece out of the Office of the Auditor General when he describes what community outcomes are. So despite the settings that we have, that is something that we have to do, what community outcomes are. And so given that, we've used the data from the district vision to propose these as the community outcomes going forward. So keen on thoughts.
So in mind, we've worked on this one as a preferred model because when we went back to the district vision and went through all the narratives in the words, these are the elements, the key elements that came up to the top. So we wanted to make sure that they were emphasising our community outcomes. And when we compared them to the last community outcomes, we had words or short statements, and they're difficult to understand exactly what they meant. So we felt that the narrative here gave a better description that describes Central Otago specifically. So that is why we have worked on this based on what we know as community feedback that is covered.
Will you leave the comments on that? I think given how frequently we're told to stick to our knitting, there's nothing in there that says roads, rubbish, roads, which I find quite interesting because often people say, well, that's our core role is water and infrastructure, and there's kind of one line in there, investment for infrastructure. I think there's a big part of our core business missing from those community outcomes.
So the community outcomes are based on what the community's told us that feedback is, and it's how we interpret it.
Yeah.
So there'll be a line underneath there saying, how will council address these community outcomes? So, and then that's where we're building it in.
For each activity, so for the, if we take water, it'll say which of these water actually responds to 3 of them. I mean, if you say, how does council's, the number one thing council does to support a safe community is a safe and healthy community is the provision of safe drinking water. And so it's So then, once we get into the activity statements, each activity will have a direct link back to the community outcome statement, and describe how it gives effect to it. That said, I'm not sure if there's.
It is touched on under economic prosperity, and the last paragraph is underpinned by infrastructure. In that sense, so it's not silent.
I don't think it's that.
We are securing starting order of roads. A road's been for a purpose. This is the purpose that they're trying to provide a road for. If you don't just provide a road, say provide roads, you provide roads because they're achieving an outcome that a community wants to achieve. So it sits across multiple of those, and particularly, certain fabric roads that provide connectivities to see each other, be very economics. Yeah, it's under, not above the property. It's the next slide down.
And that's a critical piece, because when we start to look at council services, you realise how much they impact across the board for our community, how important they are, because they are contributing to all layers of our community.
I would have thought that most people that live in the community, one of the biggest thing they want to have is affordable rates. And that's not mentioned there. If you ask anybody what they want their rates of bill not to be too high.
Councillors,
We have got, just for a point, we have got improved affordability as part of social fabric. So it says quality facilities and services and improved affordability is also important. So it couldn't be ignored. Affordability was certainly there as part of the district vision feedback, and it has been built into the wellbeing statements as a result. Sorry.
You were right, Mark, that was feedback. Community said they want to be able to live there and enjoy it.
It's a difficult thing to include as part of the community outcome, but it was clear feedback from the community as part of that process.
councillors, do you think these community outcomes fairly reflect both Tony's point that infrastructure is the fundamentals that may have been perhaps highlighted enough, and the other point that affordability, you can't see it there? I mean, are we happy with those as they stand?
A draft, so they can be amended, obviously.
So,
They
so
can be-
we don't we kind of have to be, because that's what we've established, and we're representing as what the community desires. We just have to then work out how we're going to have regard to them or not. And we're missing something.
Yes, thank you.
I like them and I understand them, and I think everyone in this room will understand them. I think they're lofty and aspirational and it's great writing, but for the everyday man, woman and child out there, I worry that they're not understandable in a way that the layman would understand what council does. I just wonder if they're a bit beyond what we're trying to communicate to our communities. Recognising that this has come from community outcome stuff, but from a certain, I guess, segment of our community, I like them. I just worry that they're too much.
But they're not, for me, I'll follow up there. They're not grounded enough. They're great, but they need a grounding. And when I see double the numbers talking about the rates increase on your feedback, as opposed to anything else, I don't see it there. And I think we can have that, but there has to be a grounding of the reality, which includes the government's new direction.
Perhaps if we, when we bring it up, we do a couple of example activity statements. So it's the next layer, so that it's really clear. If you went into, I don't know if anyone's got an LTP, but in each of the activity, and there's a different way to present that. So it could be so that it is really clear when that there is a direct link to the services we offer and the outcome statements they're contributing to.
Yeah, but I think that needs to be at the top, not the bottom, because people need headlines.
That's I agree.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Tim, you nailed it. It's the headlines, and if that's the headline, then people won't make the connection. As Tamer said, and so I think it's got to be coming back from the other way and then leading to the community outcomes. So start about the activities and then go back the other way as to how we explain it to people in the community.
Definitely, I mean, this is the starting point and it's great feedback. We'll make sure with the report to council that you can see the direct line of, so that's what people have said. What does that mean to council? What does that mean when we're doing our roading projects? Taking that into how we're going to deliver that based on the comments that are coming from our communities and the pressures that's been.
And then,
Stu, sorry, Stu.
Just quickly looking at them, aren't the outside two wrapped up in the inside two? So you
I see.
sustain business and environmental respect from the bottom captions there, and express the culture through the enhanced, following the past, and expressing the culture through the people and their creativity, and also in the robust social fabric. And that couldn't we halve them by making the two in the centre capture both in the outside?
That's a good question. We've looked at this long and hard. So the previous community outcomes had social and culture intertwined. This was quite hard to tease them out because they seemed quite similar. We found when we were looking at the district vision feedback, there were individual elements that you could tease out and say, hey, this just is actually talking about the environment. The environment came through really strong and the feedback we got from the community, people were really big on environment or how we use it and interact with it, as well as how we look after it and sustain it. So there was enough in there that we could actually, these are individual elements that have their own super play.
No, I just think our social fabric should bring all that golf and all that other stuff as well. And increased prosperity should have been in tune with the environment, considering most of our business is tourism or agriculturally based, which is related to the environment in general.
I think a key part of just from the environment ones too, absolutely. And in addition to that was the passive appreciation of the environment, which I'm not sure if you pulled it together with the economy, that's as strong as it should be. Our community was very loud in their response about why they live here. It was around motivations for living here, was the great outdoors, their productivity and the way that they make a living by being here, but also how they feel about this place. And so environment was right across all elements really, and culture. Culture was about not just studio and history, it was about our landscapes. So culture, environment was across every single element. And that's why we think it's important.
And if you recall on the last LT meeting, so the way this pictures up, it had the community outcomes, but in the very next box underneath it has council strategic objectives that support these community outcomes. And that's definitely where it would pick up on the things that some of the, obviously this narrative can be broadened as well, but the council strategic objectives, affordability and all those sorts of things could be picked up in there as specific objectives of council that link into the community outcome. So it's not one or other, it's both obviously. And we just have to work on this narrative and then make sure that what's reflected below that, all on a page, reflects what those relates to those things.
So that our community can understand that it's not just.
So when will this be coming back to us?
We can probably look to bring this back, it's iterative, so at the next workshop, we can start with it again to keep working at chipping away at it. And as we develop the piece below that, which part of that will be informed from today's discussion, we can weave some of those into this as well.
Cool. So that's the 30th question.
In terms of getting this supported and approved through that kind of process of consultation documents, are these community outcomes still closely aligned to well-being?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. But then you look at regional deals, it's about economic and infrastructure, which is economic prosperity, isn't it? So you can remove the term well-being, but you're still talking about communities, you're still talking about economic prosperity, so I guess it is a little bit of a play on words because it's Yeah, we just have to reflect it, but right now, remembering, the law is, as the law stands, is wellbeings have to be considered as part of the LGBT. That's the law, it's only the LGBT. Until they repeal or amend the local government in 2002, we're directed to reflect the wellbeings. So we're sort of caught in that, so we're sort of just turning our way conscious of what the government's saying. How can we rephrase this to make sure that it's consistent?
And is there any? Talk me through the benefits of having, thank you very much, a robust social fabric and expressions of culture as two separate streams. I think a lot of them would kind of interlink. Is there any pros or cons for having them as two separate as opposed to a combined outlet?
When we looked at that, each got quite different elements within them, so it kind of picked those out. The other thing I've noticed in our work, being a growing community, we've got people coming into our community, identifying sexual potato culture, which we don't recognise because we live here, is actually a thing. When people come in and there's friction, sometimes it's because people don't get who we are. So culture is an important thing about this and resilience of identity. So it is actually something that is worth standing for, you know, and saying actually this is a thing, this is part of who we are, this is our community, I have to be. So I mean, we felt when we went through this, if we started merging, it was kind of muddying like distinct elements of things that the community told us, feedback we got. So it was just trying to show it as clearly as we could. We did not use wellbeing in any of those headings because we are mindful of that wellbeing thing at the minute, but we also are mindful of the purpose of local government is providing for those four elements at different times. Yes.
Yes, I think the direction we want to take this is that it's going to come up with this 30th of September with some of the groundings that we sought and we'll see where it goes from there.
But some councils do have an outcome, but some councils have infrastructure as a separate outcome because they, you know, the level of investment required, you know, I've seen that done as well. So, you know, but this is an iterative process, so we'll take that feedback and tune it through and bring it back.
It's 80% of our work. I don't know that that's reflected in those.
But, I mean,
I
know, what you're saying is, and road and water, you know, because it does touch on all of it.
Yeah.
So it's how you couch it in a way that picks it up as a key part of the work.
And it's very similar to what Julie said, Tamer. So I was in Dunedin when this last change happened, and I was at and I was out consulting on the social wellbeing strategy for Dunedin City as the government was consulting on removing the wellbeings from the purpose of local government. And so every single consultation who we had, it was to have a conversation with the community to say, hey, the government is currently proposing to remove the wellbeing statements from local government. However, it is the why. It is the why we do what we do. So we provide water to enable safe communities. We provide water. We have roads to connect one another for economic prosperity. And so it's really just being able to show really clearly and succinctly how these community outcomes drive 80% of our work.
And that's what you don't need to convince me.
Yeah.
I get it, and I get that it ties it across.
Yeah.
But for our community reading this and recognising that only going to read the headlines, a lot of people, I like to think that 80% of our team and our communities will read through the whole thing. But I just worry that that's not clear enough if you're just looking at that community outcome. And I think we would be criticised for not highlighting our core role within that, recognising that it does come underneath in the activities and how it ties in. But I just think that that's not clear enough.
And that's absolutely cool. And what we want to make sure is, we said, is just to make sure we've got a starting point so that every time we do something, we're going to be doing it because this is why we are delivering this range of it. We're not just putting a pipe in the ground because it's a good pipe and we've done it well. So this is why we're doing it. We don't start our environment, so we do have.
We need to be conscious too that this government's going to be far more deliberative than the key government when they took the four wellbeings out. Like I was here when the four wellbeings came back in and I didn't notice an iota of difference. That's not going to happen this time. They're talking things such as a cap of 10% of your total expenditure to go on what core services are, and one would like to think they might identify what they think core services are in that conversation as well, and I'm sure they will. So we have to be very deliberative about that. And in addition, our communities have never had 30% rates rises in the towns before. That is the loudest voice, in my view. And as we head into an LTP, which is unclear what the increase will be, but it's going to be small. That must be.
That's why this is so important. It is so important because it's your community saying what's important to them for the next 50 years.
Correct, but 50 of those inputs to the annual report were the annual plan were the rates too high.
Yeah.
So that's what the community is saying. I'm not saying it reflected there. It must be. Okay, we'll progress from that one. What's next?
Your priority.
Right.
So now council has got some tough decisions to make, and over the next, I don't know how many workshops, budgets, all the budget workshops, 2 budget workshops, you'll be presented by activities in their budget. And so what this list is a very high level consideration of what's on our program, what's above business as usual in the next 2 to 9 years. And just as a starting point for you to consider this and to have, so it's not specifically talking about the activities within each budget, but it's the high level things that you have that have been through the process or are about to come through the process. So it's a pretty extensive list.
Keep in mind, councillors, of course, we don't make decisions today. We need to make directions, though, and following on from what's already been said, I would think the lens that has to be cast over this is the rates on behalf of the community. So when I look at that, I go to Cromwell Hall. It's happening. It's got to be complete. So but then when you cast the affordability lens, some things do stand out. Cromwell Town Centre, museums, changes in level of service, Riverside Park. And the councillors, is that, I guess, and I don't want, and we cannot go through this list today and say, well, this is number 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I think we need to have a discussion on the direction that we're going to what are the lens we're going to be looking through? And I think the lenses must be rates, and they must be, well, here's the stuff we don't have a choice over. What is the government saying? 3 Waters is in there. So it has to be a priority because we're going to have our ass spanked if it isn't. And rightly so. So how do we formulate this into something that staff can then bring back in a formal setting or in a decision-making setting to say, here's how we move forward? Because all of those are right, just some of them are right than others, depending on how.
That's what the workshop's about, is to give staff direction. And 3 Waters, of course, you need to do 3 Waters.
I guess there's a line that will have to come to us over anything on that list that looks even remotely like a nice to have.
Well, all these will come back to you at the various workshops, when we discuss property, we'll be talking about community facilities and investment in halls, but say those are the sorts of things, so, best we all see this in this for the constituent parts as it comes back at various times.
It was just trying to bring it together in one to say probably what.
So how do we progress this? Do councillors agree with the lenses, rates, and got no choice?
Some of it's business as usual, What's the cost structure of us having to have a regional policy statement on land, water and air? Where's the cost in that? Does it need to be it's a position rather than a fee, isn't it?
Yeah, some of it is.
Community facilities, community halls and earthquake, and until we find out the earthquake strengthening criteria from the government, we can't do anything there, so it's a.
Keep in mind though, our position on the regional policy statements, that its close cousin is what's got us paying legal fees at the moment with ORC. So there is cost with that.
Well, I guess is there anything in there that pops out straight away? But the point is that these are some of the key things that will be coming back to you. When I use the Cromwell Hall, the operating cost for the Cromwell Hall is going to be significant. And so, you know, that's something we're going to have to factor into the LGP, and we'll probably touch on that today, actually, and stuff like that. So, you know, so this will come back to you at various times. It's just saying, as we scan across, these are the ones that are already, some are already committed to, or in train, and some of them are decision points, and the decision points will flow through this LGP development places, museums.
Would it be helpful to mark some of them as being things we get no choice about? I'm just thinking about, you know, government reforms, regional policy statements and stuff that we are required to do that we do have no choice, that you know, you just get directed because that's got to go. That's a priority because you have to do it. Timing is how you work it through, but it has to be a priority because other people control that narrative and what we have to do.
That basis, the embedding government reform program is going to be down. I mean, but it's top of the list because we have to, but it's bottom of the list because we have no choice. So we put it in another list.
2 columns.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. Yeah, 2 columns. One that sort of says these are the no choice stuff that you don't nuts about, and here goes the stuff that we can control better.
So break them up into those 2 columns.
And that's absolutely a valid point. And the thing is, I look at local water done well, and the resource implication for that is, yes, we can do it within our team, but there'll be bits that we're going to have to go out to lawyers and spend on decision points that council make. You know, so there's a resourcing cost in both time, money, and people.
And I guess that's where you've got your 2 columns, because that's a resourcing cost that we're going to have to pay to deliver on legal requirements. And then you've got another column that I think is going to be the really important stuff of the LTP, which is around things like community facilities, earthquake strengthening, changes in levels of service. What are we going to say? There's one for our district of one of these, or there's 2 of this, or each region gets 1 hall, but no more than 1. I think that's going to be the conversations that we have to have in the LTP around that reduction in level of service, because that's the only way we're going to start pulling back those rates increases.
I think you also have to do it with monetary terms so people can actually understand. So essentially, this is what our left-hand column, if that's what we have to do, that's going to cost the community X. These things over here, and every community is going to have a different, every ward's going to have a little different what they would like and what they don't want. But if you want this to happen over here, this is happening. This is going to be additional. And you guys have to tell us what you want. Given what we've heard and what we see on here, they've already said, we don't want to spend any more money. It's almost like that entire list is already scrapped. So how much staff time do we spend on something that the community is telling us, no, we don't want to spend that money? But they still want it. You still want it, you just don't want to pay for it. And I'm not sure how you manage
Our
that.
job to do all of that stuff. It's how we fund it and what time frame we do it. That doesn't go away.
Does if the government follow through and say 10% of your operating budget is going to go on nice to
But
have.
a lot of that stuff, when you really look at it, is not all nice to have someone. Like whether you put the vetting local government program in 3 waters, the water done better and all that, they're all one. It's all core business. Halls are a core business. Whether we fund all of them or not is a different thing. But a lot of that stuff is what we're elected to change levels of service. Well, that will come under digitalisations. That discussion's in a month. Like what this will be, that'll be our priority in a month. Cromwell Hall is under control. So shorten them up, and then we'll have a look at what we've got. Riverside Park, it's really well underway.
Well, these will all be topics that we will touch on, and some of these topics we're going to touch about.
Yeah, and I guess if we didn't have a 30% rate rise because we didn't have to do some of the water and we're talking about a 12% rate rise, we'd be embracing these and going, let's see how we can implement what the community wants.
2 years ago, we screamed in horror at 12% raise.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at it as a good alternative.
Yeah.
I also like the exploring other revenue opportunities. So we're looking at savings, but I think we do need to really think about what are our opportunities. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. So maybe we've got 3 columns, the ones that we have no choice about, the ones that we may be looking at for reducing costs, and the one we may be looking at for increasing revenue. And then we break these up into those 3 columns, and then it comes to another juncture to prioritise.
Yep.
Because we can't put all of these in the long-term plan and say, what do you think? But we need to actually be able to isolate, as Tracy has said, the stuff that we have no choice in is going to cost this much, it's going to anticipate our action was over the next 9 years of these much. Here's what's left. Tell us what you want, because that's exactly what will happen. We want you to cut our costs. All right, we're going to do nothing in Cromwell Moor. How dare you? Yeah, we're going to stop Riverside Park. How dare you? We're going to bowl 5 balls. How dare you? So that's our job now as a council is to go to the community and go, you've told us. Obviously, we know we're in straitened times. We've got pressure from government as well. Here's the one haves. Tell us which ones, how much you want to pay for. So that's how we got structured, I think.
And if you like it separately, the ones that could result in an increase in revenue, because I think that is a separate spending money to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We can take that one. Again, this is going to be iterative, and as I say, you're going to touch on some of these today.
Right, it's good. That's not all day.
Righty, thank you. Sorry that I've been a bit brutal at places, but that's just what we're facing.
I'd like to talk to them because I was leaving home after going around the cows and the kid had got run sheep. I just sent an email coming and complained to say made a mistake on Monday at 1:30.
No, it's okay.
It's fine. I'm scared. And I wasn't here to time too.
You were, that's the word.
Hello, Lee. Welcome.
Yeah,
And Louise, welcome to you.
First, thank you for your time this morning, and certainly as staff, we really appreciate the challenges with these workshops. Because every workshop that you're doing brings its own unique challenges again that need to be considered, and as we consider every dollar that the fees spent, and that's on our ratepayers or users of our services that we provide. So we're very mindful of that, and hence today I'm just having a conversation with regard to dog control services of really just having a bit of a conversation about this, because we haven't really spoken about dog control in years, correct me if I get this wrong, about 30 years. And so, whilst some of the conversations that I'll be talking to you about this morning may be unpalatable, it will be challenging, but it's a conversation that we want to have. And whilst as Vanessa, you mentioned just previously, is I'm not looking for a decision, I'm just looking for some direction of what you'd like us to go away and consider so that we can bring it back, or not consider, as is the case on the big floor. So with that being said, I'm just for the next slide, please, Wayne, is when I was considering this, I was kind of thought it was important that we look back at decisions that have been made by previous councils here to consider where we're at today so that we can make informed decisions in the future, basically. And this Bakatoki basically just, it resonated with me, basically. Here, Whakatamori to hiding Whakamura. And so I walk backwards into the future with my eyes fixed on the past. And so we need to understand what's happened, what's changed, and what we're looking at moving forward, basically, as to what that is. Thanks, Wayne. I'll just keep flicking through as I'm talking. Thanks, mate. And so as we move on to the next slide that you'll be seeing there, first and foremost is when we started dealing with dog control and dog was taking might recall this, is that we were doing a lot more going on farm. We're dealing with true working dogs, if we think about high country farms, basically farm dogs. We're looking at blood tests, trying to deal with tapeworms within dogs, but going through stock, which is the sort of the process in relation to that, to try and curb that. As we work through that process, basically, and dealing with dog control as it was back in the day, around about 2002 is when New Zealand, I think, with last previously determined that we have got tapeworms under control from that perspective. Then we get into legislation, and so again, almost 3 decades ago, back in 1996, we got the Dog Control Act. And so the Dog Control Act, they looked at the objectives of dog control. And so what we're looking at is the well-being of dogs, but also the control of dogs. And so within that, it brought a couple of key elements in relation to that. And so moving on, Wayne. It's looking at when we look at dog registration and the registration fee, basically, there's two elements to it though. There's that first bit, which is the registration, and so that doesn't change, whether or not it's a working dog, non-working dog, menacing, etc. It's really an administrative function that we're undertaking for that, because it's a legal requirement to have all dogs registered, regardless of the type of dog. The second part, which is included in that, is, I guess, the dog control service that we see in dealing with barking dogs, roaming dogs, dog fouling, attacks, etc., worrying stock, that type of thing. But it's all encapsulated within the dog registration fee per se for them. And previous councils have, when we considered this, have been firmly of the opinion that the work that we do in relation to dog control, the registration, the administration, but also of responding to those service requests, should only be paid for by people who have dogs, dog owners. There should not be a rating context to that. And as part of the conversation that we'll have today, and we'll work through, and I've got 4 key areas that I want to talk to you about. I'll ask you those questions to direct me as to what you want me to go away and think about, and then bring it back to the table, or not, as again, as the case may be. And one of those will include a conversation about rates. Thanks, Wayne. That covers all of that. So the 4 key areas that we will look at is dog registration, dog control service, the level of service, and there was a previous touched on that conversation there, but also a rating contribution. And so at the moment, when we look at dog control has certainly it's changed a wee bit over the last 30 years or so. And how we dealt with that registration has improved somewhat. We have an online service. We haven't vastly increased the resourcing that we use in relation to dog control. We haven't a dog control or animal control officer. We have the administration support for that. We also have an external contractor that deals with the after hours or the weekend work that we're dealing with, for responding to the control part of it, not the registration, but the response to service requests. We've got up there that we've got dog pound facilities. They use that in quite a loose sense. We try not to have dogs in a dog pound. The drive for us is to make sure that we get dogs back to their owners, but that is a conversation that we'll be having in due course as well. We provide services such as for bark collars for when we're dealing with those nuisances, and we also provide education along with obviously the enforcement side of things. Thanks, Wayne. And so as we move into the questions, the sharp end of this workshop is, again, those 4 areas that we talked about is the registration, service, level of service, and then if we have a rating impact or not, as the case may be. So the next slide. So first of all, from a registration point of view, we're looking at non-working dogs. Beautiful dog you'll see there, very close to home. And then the working dogs. So the non-working dogs currently have a registration fee, $72. The working dogs, $12. And when we consider this topic, I guess what I'm looking for from yourselves is the fact that, again, the separation of the registration and the dog control service. The registration is purely administrative when we consider that. And it is a legal requirement and applies to all dogs equally. When I try to break down, the cost of just the registration, in consideration of overheads and such things that we carry as we provide this service, approximate costs around about between $15 and $23 per dog to just do the administration function part of it, as they stand today. But those pictures may change as we move, through the LTP and the conversation that we're having. And so if we look at the registration fees at the moment, we can see that from the working dog point of view, the ones on the right hand side, it's not even covering that cost. And so arguably there's a subsidy in relation to that context. But also, we don't have issues with true working dogs. The ones on the high country farms, we don't have those issues. And this is part of the conversation that I'll go on to in a second. And so I guess the question is if we're just looking at this face value at the moment, your non-working dogs are 6 times the cost of a working dog. Is that something that you want me to consider? So I guess the question number one is that what you would want me to go away and try and explore is how we amend that registration portion only between working and non-working, if it's just an administration.
So by law, we're bound by law as a council to administer registration of dogs.
Correct.
Yep. All dogs.
Correct.
All dogs.
It's a legal requirement.
Legal requirement to have a pound as well.
Correct.
Same.
When was the last time working dogs have been at $12 for how many years?
A very long time.
What else still costs?
There's been a big differentiation for years, so they sat around 10 for a long time, and then we made the grade move to go to 11, and now it's 12. Non-working dogs sat at around 20-25 for quite a long time. They sat at 50 or 55 probably since you've been here, Lee, and now we've had a significant jump to 70 odd in this round of registration.
And I think if we're saying that we're not having anybody else subsidising dog owners, then family dogs or pet dogs subsidising working dogs, I guess you could wear to an extent, but not when people have gone from 55 to 72 or whatever, and working dogs have been at $12 for 1700 years. Maybe there is a case to address some of that discrepancy, if not all.
To at least pay them.
The people who own lots of dogs.
You're able to give us, rough numbers of what the actual cost, is 90% of your workload town dogs and 10% non-town dogs, working dogs.
95.
And this is part of the next question that I'll get onto in a second. But if we're just looking at the registration, so we're trying not to think about the fee that we're using today. And what I'm just trying to, because the pieces to this puzzle is I want to break down it. There's a registration element and there's the dog control service, the borrowing dogs, etc. There's that element as well. So I'll bring this conversation back to you. So at the moment, just looking at from a administrative function, would you like me to go away and try and close that gap? So look at what is just an administration function. That might be that the same prices for both types of dog. If we continue with that regime of just having working and non-working, that may change as well as we go through this conversation.
Well, if you say that it's basically $20, just arguably say
Yes.
$20 to register, the administration side is to $20 to register a dog,
Yep.
irrespective of where it lives. That's the administration cost. It's as simple as that.
And then the
And
next,
then the next
next conversation.
I think that's fair.
Seems to make sense, that's justified.
Sorry, is there any, could there be any efficiencies gained in the administration of the dogs, or do you think you're pretty?
It's increasing.
Okay, yeah, I just want to ask.
The more technologically we improve, the more overhead behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, in relation to what Louise is saying, to answer your question, there is an argument which is part of the LTP conversation as well, is lifetime tax.
Yeah.
So that's where some of the administration from a registration point of view can come in. So in year one of us having lifetime tax, there would be an increase in the costs, but year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth, there would be a reduction in the costs. And what I mean by that is that they're not having to post out nearly 7,000 tags every year. The post is where there's an awful lot of administration. So there's still going to be some costs in there. We're considering that as part of the LTP conversation. So that is something.
Get rid of the tax of rural dogs anyway, for starters. There's no
It's not gonna work, because effectively in Ranfurly, all the call outs you have is in Ranfurly, the same 10 dogs. Guaranteed. And
That's what it's saying.
every shepherd in the mini total is not registered their dogs. If you're a 20-year-old shepherd, you're not gonna go into 10 dogs and register $200 of dogs.
Maybe that's a requirement of their employment on your farm, is that their dogs are registered.
But you won't get shepherds, so the guys only do, some guys pay registration for dogs, you get 5 dogs registered, then you go down and there's 10 big dogs out there. So the actual young guys that deal in dogs, they're like drug dealers dealing in drugs. They'll buy a dog tonight, off a truck at Palmerston, bring it in, train it up for a week and then sell it to someone else and make $500.
So this is where there's a balance, and so this is part of the conversation that I'll bring back to you, because there's pros and cons in relation to this conversation. There's a balance there of what is the level of registration fee that people will pay. Once we tip over that, we're going to have more enforcement, which means more work, because people don't pay it, means that which tax on.
You're at that point.
Yes, yeah. So, well, given what we've just talked, because we're kind of merging into the next set of slides, is from a registration point of view, for you to go away and explore that, just from the registration, just from the administration, obviously, if we can make more efficiency, or we can.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Next slide. And so the dog control services, just been having this conversation. So it covers the things like, the education, enforcement, the dog attacks, barking, roaming, etc., etc. Last year, we had 666 service requests. And next points, thanks, Wayne. When we look at those with service requests, we don't have the issues there. Your true working dogs, farm dogs, we don't have the issues with. What we've had issues with is because of the fee differential, we've had issues with certain individuals saying, my dog is a working dog. Okay, well, okay, how much have you used your schnauzer to do X, Y, and Z type of thing? Can you demonstrate that moving stock, etc., to follow what the legislation says? And so we've worked through that part of it, and there was a considerable number of changes that we've made in relation to that. Now we've done that, but when we still look at the number of service requests, we don't have those issues with those individuals.
What's the average cost of a service request if a staff member had to go and?
Coming on to that one, Stuart, first day on funding.
That electric shock I got yesterday, it says sharpen me right up.
And so the next point, thank you, is the fact that, so then if we exclude true working dogs, and then we have the non-working dogs, the masses from that point of view, then we're looking at the fact that 80%, the 80-20 rule again, approximately 80% of those dog owners are responsible dog owners as well. It's a small minority that is causing the challenges that we're facing, which is what's happening. You don't know, I'm quite sure, talking about with you.
No, so how many of these benefit in working dogs and non?
So just bear with me. Roughly 4,220 of non-working and around about 2,400 working. So then when we look at, to come to your question, Stu, of if we look at those 666 service requests on I guess, in consideration of the user pays system, each time that we go out and deal with that issue will be between $259 and $343. Yes. So point, please.
So the issue that I've got
Next point, please, Wayne.
is that actually some of the people in Renfield have got several dogs and are breeding dogs to sell and selling about $2,000 a litter. So you're never going to catch them because they'll get a Jack Russell or they'll get a Spaniel, and if they have 8 pups and $150 or $400, they can make a lot of money out of dogs. So they're breeding dogs. And they'll be the ones that you go into there.
So Stu, we have to balance the effort we put into certain things with the cost, and we have to look at what are our requirements under the legislation. We certainly don't trim the Renfield every day. That wouldn't be a sensible way to.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah. That's where the cost is for the rest of the way part. Those people.
So the question in relation to this one, next point, please, Wayne. Again, which we've kind of been circling around this, is do you want me to explore how we have some sort of fee structure, system model of how we reflect that of whether or not, and I don't know what that looks like at the moment, hence the question of, do you want me to look at that, or do you still want me to, I guess, encapsulate how we have it today? We have one fee, working dogs and non-working dogs, that doesn't reflect where a user pays cost going.
Well, my suggestion is, I just said to Tracy then, if anything over 5 hectares of land pays $150 dog registration fee, because that encapsulates $20 a dog, you've got 2 of them. And if you've got a shepherd or a pig hunter or something like that, he's got $20 on there.
We have to register every dog.
Every dog.
You won't get them.
Yeah, but
Well,
we
it's
can't
the same-
register a
You
property.
can't, it's not going to happen.
But Stuart, you're expected to comply with the law. Some people don't register their cat. And they run the gauntlet, and if they get pulled over, they get a ticket. It's the same with the dogs. You run the gauntlet, if your dog is found to be unregistered, you'll be fined.
But they're not going to. We take land for
We can't control what people do.
Comply with the laws that it's.
well, you haven't got enough people to do it. You're not doing parking meters in Cromwell, they come in once a month. You haven't got enough people to go and pick up registration.
We're not legally required to do that. So
We just legally required to register.
Yeah.
If people choose to or not. If we catch them, we catch them, but yeah, I mean, we're not a big city where you're going to have 20 people on your dog team. It doesn't want that level of effort.
I guess what I'm saying is the amount of unregistered dogs in the community that I live in, especially in Renfrew, especially when you get the shearers there, they're all pig hunters, they bring a dog down from somewhere else. They are not going to comply with paying tax, all alone paying registration for a dog. That is going to be a very big cost for us to go start chasing if you want to do that.
We don't have to, that's the point.
And we
The
don't.
average-
If it's what we do if we catch a dog that isn't registered. What happens then? What
We
if,
issue an infringement notice.
yeah, so, and we have the ability
Yeah,
to,
that's our ability to issue an infringement notice. And we go through this process every year with the registration and those who don't register and have a bit of a reminder, friendly approach and then the rest.
And what happens if you do issue an infringement notice when you visit trade?
It goes through the court system and the court collector. There's a,
Okay,
yeah, it's found.
so it becomes a civil matter.
Well, it comes from the Ministry of Justice side of things, of, you know, they add on a fee, which has just gone up as well in relation to the administration of chasing that infringement. When the courts chase that infringement, that could take, we don't know what period of time it's going to be, and to go through, so that could be within 12 months, it could take 5 years to get that money back. And that is the court process, basically. That's the same with your parking fines as well. And so if we're doing parking enforcement, we might issue a ticket today, but it might not get paid for about 3 years.
So I think the infringement fee is about 300 leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, for non-registration.
so when there was,
So we might do 50 of those or something.
when we did the dog registration stuff, and there was the big extension of time, and there was some real grizzling online. It was interesting, there was one group of people that said, you guys don't know how lucky you've got it, considering, and I think the most important message is, and I'm not saying that that's a reason to change the quantum of the fee, but what I'm saying is that our registration costs are quite low in comparison to other councils.
So that's exactly right, Tracy. And the reason why we're having this conversation now, I haven't really felt the need to have it before, is because of the jump, and also the broader affordability of everything for people. So when Lee's talking about the fee model to reflect the service, that can be some sort of tiered model, and we've talked about that before as well. We have, if you're a perfect dog owner and your dog has never been in trouble and you've got a fence around your property and there's been no issues, then you might pay a slightly lower fee than if the dog wandered one day and you picked it up. So there is ways to address this. In the past, the reason why we didn't pick this up was the fees have been quite low, as you've said. So it seemed that even though there was a discrepancy, the level was such that everyone was reasonably happy. The admin to find doing that is much greater, but we can look at that if we need to. Because then you get people going out and inspecting properties and, you know, people apply for a select to own a policy and pay these fees.
Because there is a lot of people out there now that are, you know, really good, responsible, the majority of people are good, responsible dog owners.
Absolutely.
But I guess,
80%, I think.
yeah, the question is that people say, what are we getting for our money? And that was one of the questions. And the other thing is, something that people bring up, especially from a town perspective, because obviously rural is a little different, but town, they want more areas to exercise their dogs. So some people might be more, and that's another type of question.
Yeah.
But it's those are the things that people really, you know.
And we have been asked through the years, what are we getting for our money, particularly from farmers? We have to register the dog by law, but that's it. We're paying to register.
You're paying the administration.
And then the dog never leaves the property, apart from maybe driving some stock, but the dog never leaves the property, so we don't get all of those complaints. So what do we get? Here's the.
And we pay a levy to, when we kill all our stock, a levy for assist overs and all that anyway. We pay twice. But none of those other dogs have got to pay a levy when they go out on the rail trail to meet more levy for assist overs and all that. So that's the other thing that farmers are paying. So they are paying to fix administration problems of the Chihuahua breeder in Ranford. They've got free money. Well, it comes up.
It's a farm expense, because a working dog is a farm expense, not a pet.
Because you could just give me just an idea that list you put on at the start of the sessions. All the costs.
So I said that dog's registered.
What is the total, what money figure are we talking about, the total service?
the provision of the total of dog control as a whole, with
Correct.
everything included, around about $325,000.
Thank you.
Set the rates.
From that conversation, I'm taking that the answer is yes to that question.
Yeah.
What that looks like, yeah, not looking for a decision in relation to that, but thank you for that. Next slide, please. And so this again links into the conversation that I've been having. This is about the level of service. And so when we look at dog control, the service that we provide, dealing with those issues, basically, we have a variety of, numbers wise in relation to each of those. Roaming dogs, barking dogs are by far the biggest issues that we deal with, basically, for both of those, approximately 20% each for each of those. Is the level of service something that you would like me to go away and explore how we address the response that we provide today? And by way of example, of dealing with more things over the phone, of not necessarily doing quite as much proactive patrolling, for argument's sake. If that's, again, I don't really get into detail of what that looks like at the moment, but is that something that you'd like me to explore if amending how we deliver the service brings other efficiencies? Then that might bring down the cost of the service somewhat. It might not, and that's what I need to explore in a little bit more detail. But is that something that you'd like me to look at? And Wayne, if you go on to the next point, I think it raises.
It does seem like people are quite happy with the level of service at the moment and actually being able to get a response or a person attending when, and I think seems to be money quite well spent. And I worry that if we be backwards on the current level of service, that unhappiness will again increase.
I'd agree. The last couple of years, the complaints coming across my desk have dropped away. The great oracle of Facebook, you see now more people saying, well, ring the dog control officer instead of bitching here, to use a dog reference.
Yes.
As opposed to a couple of years ago, bloody council does nothing anyway. That's just an anecdotal reflection, but I think I agree with Tamer. We're hitting the right note. I think we're not far off being about right at the moment.
Absolutely.
And that dog report at the last council meeting, the increase in the number of complaints is actually a really good sign that we're getting it right, because people realise there's a viable way of going about things rather than going on Facebook.
And I thank you for that, because we think, the values, the cost of registration as it is today, or the balance that we've got, I think it's about right. We might need to move it around a little bit. Wayne, can you just go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Just for the question. But if we think that we've got it about right, then no to that question, basically, at this stage for that. I won't look into
Some
that.
other councillors.
That's a question.
Yep.
How much of this rate is related to the density of the population of dogs?
Absolutely, which is where we find the majority of the issues that we have from Royal Alexandra base, but it's also easier for us to respond to that from that point of view versus going to, the Tiviot or to the Maniatoto from that point of view. But it's not to say that you still proactively monitor from all parts of the district for that. And I think that because we are doing that, we are seeing a reduction in the issues. The team link in with the business owners in relation to the different areas as well. Say, hey, look, I'm around. What are you hearing on the street, so to speak, so that we can focus our attention to deal with the issues that we were experiencing. You've raised in previous council meetings the issues that you find in your community, and we've gone out there, we've patrolled out there, we've linked into all those businesses to say, hey, I'm here regularly. Tell me what's going on so that we can address those issues.
So do we have any, guidelines as to what density of population we should have amongst the human population?
The limit to, you're only allowed to have in town, you're only allowed to have 3 dogs.
That's true.
Unless you get a permit.
Unless you get a permit.
Unless you get a permit.
So every house could have 3 dogs.
So every house has 3 dogs. That's a lot of dogs.
It is, and the picture would change.
Our picture would be drastically.
I don't think that we're going to get that, for every household having 3 dogs. But if we did, and the level of service changed significantly, I'd be coming back to have a further conversation with each, of course, for. Well, it's possible.
We don't have any control over 4 houses in a row having 3 dogs.
Well, what
You
we,
have those 3 dogs.
what we would look at is in relation to if you're applying to have more than 3 dogs in an urban area, to say, well, okay, what does that look like? What are the knock-on effects? Are we going to get more complaints coming from that? What control can we put in place in relation to that?
So where I was going with this is that 1 dog might be, $50. 2 dogs is, 3 dogs might be $200 each. So there's I guess, an incremental cost to the owner for having more dogs because of the increase in the service level that is implied by the number of dogs they have.
Would you say though, then, Mickey, like Tracy says, 80% of our dog owners are great, and I quite like what Louise said about the kind of insurance premium thing. If you're not a careful dog owner and your dogs keep getting out, you're paying a higher cost because you are a drain on the service, as opposed to someone who's got 2 or 3 dogs that never leave their property and are always well quiet.
And I'll go away and consider all of that. One last question for you. So, having had that conversation of looking back at what this council has historically said, is to say, well, the cost of registration, the cost of the dog control service should be funded by dog control, by dog owners. Next point. Don't have the issues with your true working dogs, your farm dogs. The vast majority of dog owners are responsible dog owners. Has the picture changed in any way whereby yourselves today think that actually there is a public good element that we need to consider here? The picture has changed over the last 30 years, and we feel that there should be a rating contribution to this conversation.
Yeah.
And if so, would you like me to go away for the next question, please?
Could I just jump in there too, because, our pounds are terrible, you're going to get onto that at another time, but if we have to, because I don't think we'll meet the compliance levels, and legally we have to have a pound.
Yes.
If we, and that's a capital cost. Under this question, would the interest charge fall on the dog owners, or would the cost be spread across? Because that's because there is a hot further building about.
That absolutely is, Peter, and so that will be part of the conversation that I'll bring back to the table for that, is to say, well, if we believe that the picture has changed over the last 3 decades, and we believe that there should be, we're not talking about what that level should look like at the moment, and to Peter's point, there will be options that I will bring to you as to what that picture looks like in due course. The fundamental question at the moment is that something that you would want me to go away to explore of a rating contribution to the dog control service?
But I just, the council's power to raise money in this area is charging a registration fee. If there's any infringement and there's a fine of any sort, then it comes out of council's hands to collect it. It goes into the courts.
No, the infringement can be paid directly. It's straight into our coffers. So, you've got a wandering dog, I'll give you a fine and pay it. It's only if it goes through the court. If they don't pay within the required amount of time, following the reminder, it's like a parking, like a speeding ticket. Might know about that. It's, if you don't pay after a certain amount of time, then it's filed to court.
But you still get the original amount.
So
No, it's more too.
No, you pay.
Oh, you get more as well.
Yeah, it's not equal.
Thanks, Tamer, and then Cheryl.
Quick question. When people get arrested and held overnight, they have to go to Queenstown. You share a pound with Curol, Lisa?
We kind of do at the moment to a degree in an agreement with them, a relationship that we've got with them, particularly over the winter time. If we did need to impound the dog over winter, we work with them to transfer the dog to the Warwick pound. Currently, because of the conditions of our pound. So Peter's point earlier in relation to the, we'll be looking to replace that. It's a conversation that we can have and to what that picture actually looks like. Obviously, that increases some of the costs from a travelling point of view.
But surely the cost increase from a travelling point of view far outweighed by the capital costs and then the ongoing running cost of having our own pound. How many dogs would we have across our region and theirs that would need to be impounded at any one time? It just seems like that would be a really good option to look at, as opposed to saying, especially if it was if theirs, I'm not sure what theirs is like, if they need to upgrade theirs anytime soon.
I can tell you because I know firsthand, their Wanaka pound is very good.
Yeah.
Their Queenstown pound is slightly older from what the sort of prefab type of a pound facility.
And it may be that we could have a reciprocative agreement with Wanaka in the meantime, and then once we outgrew that and we needed to build one, you built one big one in Cromwell, that Queenstown and Wanaka could access, or whatever that.
And so, absolutely, and that's something that I will certainly look at.
Yeah.
To come back to your question, or my question was.
Yeah,
No, Cheryl, the project.
So, yeah, just in relation to your question,
Yes.
and I'm not saying I'm for or against it, I think it would be really interesting to look at a rating, component. And I mean, the reason I say that is because there's a lot of people that don't use the libraries, but they still pay a component of their rates is made up for that facility. So I think on balance, it'd be quite interesting to see what that looks like.
So I think that's a really good point, Cheryl. We've sort of debated this a little bit, and also it starts there is what is public good? And do you say on one hand, there is a public good of going into a town and you're not stepping in the dog mess and you're not being attacked by a dog, so here's public good. But this council is always taking the responsibility of, that is the responsibility of the dog owner. Do people get a benefit of dogs being in the town? Where's your public good from that? You know, like your public good from the library, which you go in and you can get a book and you enjoy. You can go for a swim if you want, you can go to the park if you want. So it's just understanding where the responsibility lies and where the public good element is. Because it's definitely better to go into a town that doesn't have dog problems, no argument there, but it's that balance that Lee's asked you about that he has to look at.
Can you, when you're, you know, if you do look at that, can you look at it in two sort of parts, that the dog owner is responsible for basically the maintenance, the worrying, the registration, all that, but the pound is a facility and is looked at in a separate way? Can you do that?
Absolutely, and that links back to Peter's point, basically, you know, if it comes to costs, and that might be something that, you know, we would consider, hence this conversation to say, well, okay, we still have the activity per se that is paid for by the dog registration fee, whatever that model looks like, but the capital cost there is a rating contribution to that for a period of time, and that's what we would look at and go through with the tool, obviously, in relation to it as well.
Stu, right, I think I'm keen on the rates contribution and minimal because it will encapsulate everyone. You have got growth that's going to be unprecedented through the regions where the dog problem is. And if you take our 30-year long-term plan, you've got a lot of dogs going to be in Cromwell and Alexandria, let alone where you've got growth. So you need to have more teeth to be able to do it. For the near 20 years I've been on the community board, there wouldn't be many meetings where dogs don't come up in the meeting of Toto. They're just wandering or whatever, and some of them get looked after by members of the community rather well, and so do the people. But our community is small enough where the chairman of the board or Mark Harris or Duncan Hill knows the person walking the dog and saying, sort your dog out and you're in trouble. But it's going to go on. And I talked to an ex-neighbour the other day, he got a shed with 24 dogs. I guarantee he hasn't got them registered. So by having a fee somewhere, and it might not be much, but it's going to be a bigger problem in the future. And it's a bit like the libraries. You know, not everyone uses the library, but they'll pay for the community good.
All you're arguing is that if you break for it, you just give a license for the problem to come even
Well,
more.
they're not going to register them. So don't think for a moment that you're going to, people are going to register.
You're doing free rein to bad practice. It's not public good we're talking about here, it's public bad.
I'm going to pull that debate and I'm going to hear from Tracy, then I'm going to sum it up.
Yeah, I would like to, I'm with Cheryl, I would like to see that split, to agree that the costs, but the infrastructure, including a pound, and for urban people to have a place. Because that's, I think we hear that quite a bit. People in towns want to have a place that they can take their dogs, chat to their pets, other people who've got dogs, and it's quite a thing. So, you know, I think that would be quite important for people, for dog owners to know that we're actually listening to that.
Okay, so where I see things is this. Personally, people don't have a choice about paying rates, they do have a choice about having dogs. But there's different views around this table, so I think it needs to be explored and it needs to come back for our decision. whether we're going to put that out or not, because we can't make a decision today, but I'm hearing people are footing their camp without a full. So I think we probably need to explore it as you've got up there.
Thank you, last slide. So just to summarise the conversation that we've had, we're saying yes to the first bullet point, we're saying yes to the second bullet point, we're saying no to the third, and we're saying yes to the fourth.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you.
Party to
So what do we need to talk about anyway? How are we there? Dogs and trees, that's things going to be wary of.
Look, the answer here, just get the question.
Thank you, sorry for taking a bit more of your time.
No, thank you. That's a very good report. You can put in the workshop. Righty ho. Oh, goody, 3 waters. Yeah.
She's got a lot of paper.
Well, get all this. That's fine. If you've got the chance to talk me on the workshop, there, it's all in piece of yeah, it's definitely. On the radio, 10 days on the radio, something, we should remember the county, we're going to workshop on dogs, about dogs.
Yeah, but I think it looks okay, I'll be able to.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just got to agree. People aren't going to reach the dogs, the young dogs, the ones who want to be. Man, it's no. That's really good. And now that's where you're going to look at the. Oh, the mob is there.
So Jordan's just handing me some budget shapes, and the reason I'm passing these out is, we have taken my meeting this week was Kira. She asked if there was information about the funding of some of the projects. So as you can see, we're getting the way that the was going to get up at the moment, all the ones are still to come. There's a lot of projects, and as I go through my presentation, I'm going to talk about timing because timing is one of those things that's probably going to move around quite a bit depending on what's happening within the district. So we get started next slide. So I've split my presentation today up into 3 sections. The first bit I'll talk about is local water done well updates because we're getting a lot of information coming out at the moment from the BIA. Then where we're at with regional collaboration, and I'm sure and Peter contribute to that discussion following on from that meeting last Friday. And then finally, I'll talk to you around the budget considerations. Slide up. So just there's been a couple of webinars in the last week from the DIA that have been really useful. The first one focused around the water service delivery plans and what they had to do. And then the second one that we had yesterday was largely around funding, and the local government funding agency was here to this informative as well. So basically we have to, this is just a bit of a recap really of my previous presentation for you. So, and these words are straight from the DIS slide. So the water services delivery plans are intended to be a strategic decision-making tool for councils to consider current and future delivery. So we have to set out how the council will deliver high quality, financially sustainable water services in the long run. So I will put a bit of a caption around, I would say high quality for us means compliant. And financial sustainability means we're able to raise the funds to fund the work required. It's not necessarily affordable. So we have to include information on our water services, how much we need to invest and how we plan to finance and deliver it through our delivery model. And the majority of the information in the plans is expected to come from our existing documents, such as our long-term plans, our financial accounts, and our asset management plans. So we have got templates from them now for this work, and it's probably largely around the financials more than the actual assets. There's a bit of compliance information we have to provide, but we typically do that work anyway, so we'll just be populating the templates with information that we've got readily available. Next slide. So this is a slide from the presentation last week from the DIA that I put up, and what they're saying is that we're encouraged to go through the following key steps to consider what the water services delivery model is for us and to complete our plans. So step one is that we actually do the business as usual, the status quo funding program that we would normally do for a long-term plan. And I think it's really important that we focus on getting this piece done properly, because this is basically the baseline for everything else. And there's a lot of work happening sort of regionally at the moment where they're trying to develop models and do different things, and I get a bit concerned because we are still working on what our numbers are going to be. So modelling numbers that are incorrect kind of undermines the credibility of that work. So next slide. So we have to consider options. These are the options we have available to consider. This is from the government. So there's that in-house business unit, which is the status quo, a single council CCO, a multi-council CCO, which is with our neighbours or colleague, other council. And then there's two consumer trust options, one which would be a combined council trust, and that last one is just more like a Central Lakes Trust kind of thing. So next slide, I'll just explain what those mean a little bit. So the internal business unit is largely how we operate now. A single council CCO is we take what we do now and we put it into a separate council-owned organisation that has a board across it. The legislation doesn't actually say you have to have a board, but LGFA will reflect that, and it'll be asset owner. Or multi-council is you have another CCO, we all have shares in that organisation, but it's just more councils in the same thing, probably more cost effective in terms of its financial structure, the one board across the thing. The consumer owned trusts, the last one, you have elections for the people who are on the board of that trust. The thing with number 4 and number 5 is they won't have access to local government LGFA debt like the CCOs will have if those councils are members of LGFA, which we are a member of LGFA and we have access to LGFA.
Before you move to the next one, Julia, so can I clarify? Number 1, you have access to LGFA at your debt ceilings. Number 2, you have the 500% revenue, and number 3, you have the 500% revenue. Because that slide from yesterday, they don't have the LGFA mentioned at number 2. Yeah, thank you.
You go to that next slide. So LGFA funding for a CCO, you can have up to 500% debt to revenue, whereas I think we currently around that.
The current debt cap for us is 175%.
Yeah, and with that, with the credit rating, that will go up.
It's 285, something like that.
So
can I clarify, Paul or Julie, that 500% is water revenue or council water revenue? Yeah, so it's 280 council revenue.
Yeah, two different things.
500 of water revenue.
Are they about the same?
No.
We haven't calculated that out yet. So, but they need to, in order for LGFA to provide that funding, these CCOs need to be asset funded, and they need to have an independent board from council. So you would appoint that board, and they would have statement of corporate intent that you would issue a letter of, what they call it, letter of intentions.
Letter of expectation and then statement.
So how big would a board be?
professionals that would, so 6 to 8 people. 6. Stacey?
So just asset owning, so essentially what you're saying is that asset owning is that the water infrastructure is going to be split off. If that is the way it goes, the water, it'll be valued and split off.
Yeah, and I think my next slide, I had a slide that. But yes, basically that asset owning, so your debt, all three waters, your assets and any reserves that you have, transfer into the CCO. So.
When would that happen if?
Well, we have to work through all that. Stu, this is the start of the conversation. So
If you have a standalone CEO, does that allow you to set up an organisation where where the operating arm can still sit within the CODC and the overhead recovery is still allocated to that?
what Peter and I think is that we would have, you could sit in the same building potentially because you're just paying for a building rental, but you might have a service agreement with a fee for the overhead parts.
So that retains the ability to recover, to spread the overheads into the three waters area.
Yeah, but it would need to be very clear, and it would depend a bit on the board and what the board, that organisation thinks is appropriate. Like, was all going well, I would imagine, and board would think that's fine if it was, and they might need, because they'll have to have separate financial accounts. So
Yeah, I understand that, but in theory, there's a mechanism to do that.
You think we move with that happening with current CCO?
So with the current CCO, well, Wellington Water is a CCO, but, the own shareholding councils have no water overhead because they do nothing with water. They just pay a management fee and that's brought back to the council. And so, but yeah, we could charge rent and we so there's mechanisms.
Yeah, which is quite an important advantage of a standalone CCO as opposed to a.
That's right. It becomes a multi-council, then you pick up, that's right.
So if it was just us, we wouldn't be employing HR people and, all the other support services that the council has, and your front desk person, all that sort of thing, you'd probably just charge back to the council, because that would be the most cost effective.
Yeah. Well, to put it the other way, if three waters disappeared out of council's control, then all of a sudden you've got 20 to 30% or whatever percentages of your fixed overheads being spread over that.
But there will be a stranded overhead component that will not be able to be billed or transferred to a new entity. So we had to deal with that, and that was even put through when the previous government had a payment to cut stranded overheads in the first instance.
Yeah, but only for 2 years.
Yes, but we wouldn't get that.
It was $85 or something, or 8 unit springs to mind.
Just
Tracy.
The decision, however the decision looks, is it a long-term plan decision or is it a council decision as to what avenue we go?
What the law says is that you have to make a decision. You have to consult on that decision. If you haven't done an LTP yet, you can consult on that decision as part of the LTP process. To streamline that, you have to provide two options. One is the status quo, which is the internal business plan, and a CCO option, at least one CCO option.
So we make that decision as to, and then we go to the community.
You make the decision as to which CCO option you're on.
Well, not necessarily, which of 2 to 5, because it could be community trust and consumer trust as well.
Yeah, but there's,
I think
you're not supposed to stand out.
No, hang on, I've got Stu, then I've got Nigel.
I'll go back to the board. How do we form a board?
Well, look, and this would be that cost around the legal cost. We'd have to form a company and put all those structures in place. We'd have to come up with shareholders agreement. We'd have to come up with some, Steve.
And I guess I was under, we appoint a board,
Or do we have, well, we the council,
Yeah,
don't
we
we
have to
appoint
go
the
out.
board? Does our second nominations, concepts and.
Yeah, yeah. We go professional board. It's a professional board. It's not, you know,
Involved.
staff are banned from being on.
That's the next question. I was going to keep.
Existing staff being on.
Do you have a question, Nigel?
Boston.
The thing with a single entity CCO, us having our own CCO is, this is all about trying to find savings. And I don't see how we're going to find savings for a single CCO when we're paying 6 directors, setting up a company and doing anything else. The CCO model will only create savings at the cascade. I think it would be a fair statement.
I've got a few more slides, so why don't I go through my slides?
Yeah, right.
So, look, can we just go back, quite finish that slide, that previous slide? Go back. Yeah, so just around debt, the debt, is separate to council's debt, but it's kind of based on, the interest rates will be based on what the credit rating is that the council has. And the, development contributions will still be occur, but we still, a CCO can get a charge for development contributions. The government's currently reviewing how growth is funded.
So they set the development contribution for water if they run the water into. That's probably quite a big thing.
Yeah. Next slide now, Lonnie. So for us, the next steps at the moment are to review, we're working through our projects and reviewing the scope of those projects to try to focus in on meeting compliance needs and growth, because that's the legal requirement for these plans, and that's kind of, so that's got to be our first priorities. We're refining those budgets down for the first 10 years. So in the sheets I've put in front of you, you'll see I've got detail for years 1 to 10, but year 11 to 30, I've just condensed into one. I haven't done any work looking at previous budgets around year 11 to 30. I've pushed a lot of stuff from year 10 out a bit where I can. And we need to put this information into our Magic Finance system. We need to review our renewal splits and our growth splits, because renewals are funded through depreciation, growth will be funded through DCs. And the reason we need to review that is we don't want to, it's not a precise science doing those splits. And so if I get it wrong, you could end up with a $200,000 wastewater DC in Omacare, for example, which would suggest that we've overstated the amount of growth that we build into the plant that's going in. So there's a bit of toing and froing. So this is kind of first cut of numbers, but then we have to review those splits. And we don't want to have the renewal component of our projects higher than what we fund in depreciation, because otherwise you go on a downward slide into you're not recovering, depreciating high enough. So once we've got that all done, the finance team will do their magic with applying interest and increased depreciation from the work that we're doing and overhead costs. And so that means that we should understand what the initial financial sustainability of the status quo is by late October. And we think that we could probably give a rough indication of what a single council CCO would look like at the end of October as well. Just whether it's going to stack up or not. Yeah, because the key issue here is that you have to have the debt capacity, and if you run out of the debt capacity at year 7, it's not financially sustainable.
And then that wouldn't, a water plan then wouldn't get passed through government because it's not sustainable. Yeah.
Next slide, one. So our focus for November is to get the status quo, the templates filled out for the status quo and for one other CCO option. So a single council CCO is our fallback position, because while the preference would be to be in a regional one, we don't control the region. We can, Peter and Tim have influence, but ultimately it's a group decision. So we have to have that fallback of a single council CCO. And it's likely, I would suspect, that you would want to consult all those options anyway, but through at least the 3. I haven't gone into community trust too much, Tim, because it's around access to debt that becomes the key issue. So we are using contracted external support to help populate the templates for finance. We've got a staff member who used to work here who can help, and also work for the National Transition Unit who can help us with that. We think we'll use internal resources for the asset management parts of it. We'll get some external advice around CCO setup costs from a consultant. So I was actually employed here 21 years ago because this council was going into CCO.
Jack in the chamber.
QLDC and NZTA.
Is this decision money after the net?
Yes, that was Remarkable Roads, and that process got right to, they had appointed the board and they were in the recruitment process for the chief executive when that collaboration fell over.
Okay.
So rationale, we're doing all the background work there, but what actually happened there was that QLDC went a bit rogue and just didn't go out for tender with their roading contracts and gave it to a guy who had previously who worked there and broke every NZTA procurement role in the book, and NZTA got a new chief executive who made the statement that nobody who wasn't employed by the state highways would be allowed to make a decision around work on state highways, which kind of undermined the whole collaborative nature of that CCO.
Just with regards to the absorption of this and the cost, you will recall that we had to, under ministerial direction, we had to repurpose Better Off funding and pull that back. So there was about 173,000 funds that has been put towards this bit of work.
Yeah.
Nigel?
Yeah, I would argue that I don't like saying that a single council CCO is a fallback position, because I think it's tantamount to prejudging the situation.
Oh, yeah.
We have to do ourselves, and the only option we have at the moment is, so that's why it's the fallback, that's what's going on.
Look, I
The only thing we have to
don't want to say, it's
No.
not for me to say what your preferred
Yeah,
option is going
but
to be. It's your baseline CCO.
The status quo may not be affordable from financial sustainability, and if we can't
Yeah,
come as a region, we need an alternative.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying, it's just.
Once we only said once we have control.
I mean, I think without prejudging what you're going to be researching here, there's the stranded overheads. I also think that you really got to, I don't know how you quantify it, but if we go to an external CCO, a regional, some kind of regional organisation, we give away a lot of control internally on the integration of our infrastructure and our planning departments. And we lose the control of prioritising when projects get done, when subdivisions get done, that all. And the third factor that I think needs to be borne in mind is that face what happened under the previous government, that everyone shied away from the idea of standardised charging. And so if you get a regional CCO, you bet your bottom dollar you're not going to get standardised charging, and COBC was sitting there paying water rates, 3 water rates that are much higher than metropolitan areas. So every instinct my body tells me that a regional CCO, I don't know where the discussions are going, but I can imagine it's like.
I'm going to show you slides on me.
Oh. You just showed 6 cats in a bag. I was expecting that will cover it.
Very cool.
So I guess that leads us into the next slide. So the regional update is that a shortlist has been approved by the mayors, chief executives. Obviously the status quo, we've got to do the status quo. Joint contract, so my only comment I'm going to make in that is it's not going to pass the financial sustainability test. It's not an option for us. Shared service agreements through a formal entity, once again, we won't be able to access it because debt won't pass the financial sustainability test. Option 4, a management CCO. Once again, it's not asset owning, so it won't pass the financial sustainability test for us. So we're kind of left with option 5 as a potential option. So just got a bit more detail about option 5 is on the next slide, William. So option 5 the councils will establish a water services organisation that is responsible for all elements of water services delivery for the shareholding councils. So you'd be issued shares in that. It would have an independent board. Under that model, the councils would transfer its assets, debt and powers to raise revenue. So that's the billing. They would set what the billing cost would be. The CCO would take over the employment of the staff of the councils, and they would have options there around whether they wanted to differentiate the water charges by scheme district or harmonise. The indications at this point are that it's unlikely to be any regional agreement to harmonise.
Yeah.
They would at least be split out by district, and some of the districts still are funded by scheme. They have different rates in every scheme in their district, so they're not districtised like us. And then the debt would operate the same way. They would have a central treasury function where they could leverage debt across the whole, but they would allocate that debt out to, and the repayment of that debt to the districts rather than harmonising it across the whole.
That's very clumsy.
Harmonising is simple.
Everybody understand. And at a political level, Menjobi Clark said in the Southland Times, I think it was last week, that he wants to see a standalone option or an Invercargill City CCO. He felt that the efforts of the collaborative model amongst the quote warring factions of other southern councils would be mired in arguments that would still be continuing by Christmas next year. The invalid Gore responded that Invercargill City decides to go out alone and screw over the rest of the Otago and Southland, and they're both right.
Yeah, yeah.
Just three waters wrapped up with a different bow.
Yes, it is.
And then, of course, what did the majority of the community turn around and say they don't want? And now here we are all over again, and we're going to be no further again with a whole lot of people disagreeing. And then, of course, as soon as this type of thing gets out, we're going to have the public all growling again.
It's the same thing. They don't want that, but they don't want to pay for
But have we gone through this to say how much this will actually legally have to do and what time frame we have to do
I'm
it?
going to go through that next.
Well, actually, but Julie Hampton and Team R is continuing to be refined as.
You know, I guess it's in the back of my mind, it's telling me, why don't we select the board now, start looking at it before we start making the decision, or get people that.
Because we don't know.
I know, it's where.
Numbers there. So
Yeah,
it's money that our CCO option is completely open financial answers.
Yeah.
Financially accountable, but these people are jumping around all over the shop. So
They're always heading in one direction. Though. The other political thing I'll throw into the mix, just since you raised it, Tracy. On the 19th of September, so we're just short of 6 years ago, the Nai Mahuta at the Water New Zealand conference says councils are taking a proactive approach to working together to advance their understanding of the Three Waters challenges in their regions and to think about potential options and solutions. We saw how that worked. We are no further ahead.
And no wonder people grizzle and say that they complain about the wheels of whether central or local government, and it takes so long. But it's not a big issue. It's a big issue.
No one's.
And the water is still being delivered. Thank you to Julie.
Exactly.
Let's keep.
And we've developed, and we've got growth, so we're winning.
I do take some comfort from your frustration because I've had this frustration since the years last year. Because it is the same under a different banner. Without the central government support, we would actually get to make decisions. Yeah. Next slide. So now I'm going to move on to the budgets because the guts of this is around whether we can scale back enough to be sustainable or not and be compliant and meet our growth requirements. So I would just say as a bit of context, you know, myself and my team, we're vastly aware of the financial impact that rates had on the residents this year. We are working really hard to try to minimise those impacts, but we do have our backs against the wall on some stuff. And growth in this district is starting to have a significant impact on work that we have to do. So it's not all about compliance, it's actually a lot about growth as well. So I'm going to go through these first two slides, give you a bit of a high level. So we scaled it back, and if you remember, it was sitting at about $400 million. So I've got it back to about 276 million at the moment. Water's 130, wastewater's 146, and I've tried to level it out the best I can. And I was here last night trying to pull these slides together, and I thought, actually, I'm just moving numbers around like spreadsheets now. It stops being very meaningful because the drivers for the timing of these projects are outside of my knowledge or control sometimes, particularly when it comes to growth. So all I can say is it's going to probably be about $28 million of investment per year, but there will be shifts in the timing of when certain things happen, just because it's too early at this point to be able to narrow down exactly which year within the next 10 years a project might get done and how much would get spent on the project in that year, because most of these projects go over multiple years. So next slide. So just a bit more of a split on that. So if you look at it, you'll see renewables is kind of coming in at 30-35% across water and wastewater. Growth is sitting at around that 30% on both grids, and level of service is sitting at around the 36-37%. So they are remarkably similar. I've done a quick reality check on the renewables component, and I think for water it's definitely about right with where we would be sitting at depreciation funding across 10 years. It's probably a bit high on the wastewater, so we might have to revisit.
So we're depreciating more than the wastewater we're spending?
We're spending more than we're depreciating potentially on wastewater. With water, it's basically $1 in on depreciation, $1 out on renewal sort of scale, whereas with wastewater, it might be $1 in and $1.50 out. It's probably sitting around 10 million too high, but it's kind of hard because I don't have inflation in this. These are baseline costs at today's dollars without inflation, and depreciation increases. So every time you build something new, your depreciation for the following year goes up as well. So I'm just taking last year's depreciation, working it out roughly about.
So the 30% cost and everything else we're dealing with hasn't been picked up in inflation and depreciation.
No.
So it's gone.
So it's probably not far out.
Yeah.
And then we need to do the exercise with the growth to see what does that mean at scheme level around how those DCs might be looking, because there can be huge variability in that. So our rationale will actually do that problem for us.
So do we have to work it out for the likes of Omico where we're going, we feel we need to move to land. So that's a renewal because the plant's older than I am.
Yeah.
But it's also a level of service improvement because it's going to land with a component of growth. Is that all mixed up into those different things?
Quick look at those sheets of paper. You'll see there's an orange column that's year 11 to 30. And then beside that, you see valuation, GRC, which is the gross replacement cost. So that's actually the 2022 valuation, not the 2023. It's not last year's valuation, it's the year before. And so you can see that there's a value. So what we do, and Chantel helps, is really good at doing this, is we look at it and say, well, if we're replacing a plant, and a plant, say, costs 20 million, but the existing plant's only worth $1 million, you can only replace 1/20 of that cost down for replacing the plant, because it's actually an improved level of service that the building of maybe a bit of growth will be. So Omico will largely be around improved levels of service because their existing water and wastewater sites have very low values. It's pretty cruddy, to be honest, which is why they're looking for case.
But that will be a valuation, we'll get a revaluation on all that asset, though, won't it?
Yeah, then your depreciation goes up. And so this is where affordability impacts start to come in, because it's not just,
But I mean, to me, you look at it and the growth's our friend, but it's also our foe.
yeah.
But to my simple brain tells me we're not development contributions aren't big enough. Because inflation's caught us all. And budgeting for inflation, everyone's going to put 6% or 8% inflation. So unless we budget for inflation and depreciate for inflation, we're going to be always going to be caught in the gap.
Yes, so we certainly got caught with the development contributions over the last 3-year period. So if you think back with it around timing, we're doing this stuff the year before the LTP gets adopted. So we're basing things on what it costs now, and we were doing this work in 2020 for the 2021 LTP, and we know what happened in 2020 and after that with costs.
So what sort of dollar values was that roughly would have been?
Look, I know what
2 or 3 million?
some of our projects were more than doubling the cost. And so the development contributions, what they do is when they calculate them, they look backwards 10 years at actual costs. And they look forward 10 years at projected costs. And so there is a potential to pick that up, but it'll be picked up in the new developments happening, not the ones that have already paid their development contributions or had them set.
Was that methodology wrong?
No, well, that's the legal methodology. So this is why the government is looking at the stuff. And certainly from this year, we will go to annual reviews about development contributions. We looked at doing an annual one last year, but because we were only adopting an annual plan, we could only look at the projects that had been done or were going to be done this year. And so that result of that was, I think like Omakau went sky high. Redfern went sky high. Probably dropped by a heap because we were in the early stages of projects. We're not actually spending the capital money right now. So we decided it was better to leave them than see these huge crazy changes happening last year.
So when we set a development contribution, have we not got a formula of the cost plus 150%?
No, we can't do that.
You want rating, we can't charge for something we can't rate. So we're never going to catch it up.
There's very strict legal requirements around the setting of development contributions, and I can tell you now that Rationale will come in and they will test me on some of these numbers because I have projects in there that are 100% growth funded, and I will have to explain every single one of those, and they'll say they'll believe that there's probably a component of wider community good in some of those projects. But my view is we don't actually need to do them. The only reason we're needing to do them, and I'll show you some stuff. So it's because growth. And I have to have good evidence to support that because otherwise we could be challenged in court, which would be a bad outcome. So next slide one. So in terms of my scaling back, so this comes to your comment about do we have to do this? So what I've done is and the biggest cost reductions are probably in the wastewater compliance space. So based on the messaging that has been coming from government, I've assumed that we're going to continue to discharge our treated wastewater to water in the future. That any increased wastewater performance requirements wouldn't get applied to a site until the consent gets renewed. So most of ours are out quite a while, Alexandra and Omakau, the exceptions. I've assumed, and this is an assumption, is that you're going to support some changes, increases to our OPEX budgets to enable us to better manage sludge, stormwater infiltration and trade waste. Because if we can get on top of that a bit better, we can meet compliance requirements without having to we can push those upgrades out further. Omakau's still going to need a new site for planning requirements, so I haven't actually changed anything that was in the existing proposal for that. I've scaled back Alexandra's wastewater upgrade significantly. So we've gone from an initial budget of around 103 million and then dropped to 60 million. And I've scaled that back now to about 33 million. And so the 33 million is to duplicate is a process duplication because it's only got a single line through it. And so it's an old plant that operates 24/7. So if something breaks down, you're in trouble, and something is going to break down. It's not a case of if, it's just a case of when. And so it also has an addition of membrane treatment. So that 33 million will meet our compliance and growth requirements. It doesn't build in, it doesn't mitigate every risk though. There's still risk and we still need to get on top of stormwater.
70 million, we don't need to, do we?
What was that?
But to come from 100 million to 33 for the 67 million for the risk, I mean, we're not in the right place.
So even 60 million to 33 is based on getting stormwater infiltration because I pulled out the things that, deal with increased volumes during rainfall. So we don't have to manage the risk of huge amounts of stormwater coming into the plant during heavy rain events. We can pull that back. And on top of that, we have to deal with those properties who have electric connections and also replace more pipes that have leak leakage rates.
You need to get on to that. Tony?
Yeah, I just wondered what percentage of properties who've been sent that original letter have since complied.
We don't know because we haven't had resource to do that follow up and enforcement and stuff.
So it's enforcement problem. Sure.
Yeah, no, as I don't know how anybody else feels, but is there the possibility, and then we touched on this with you, that when you buy a house, it's already got that existing problem, you've just inherited it, and realistically, I'm just wondering, is there a way that rates can be put into this, that you actually rate, that stays on the title of the house, and that fixing the problem, it's banked, paid for by the council, and then the rates pay it back over a period of time. Because it's quite expensive to get that fixed. So, they're not, a lot of people won't do it. So, but if we could give them some kind of incentive or assistance to actually do it, and then you leave that spending attached to the property, then whoever buys it's going to pay off.
Is it on the list?
I would expect, that's because we did check that.
Because then when you go to sell the house, you're pretty quick going to find $700 or $800 person, aren't you?
It could potentially go kind of a rate like there is for Clyde. But we'd have to look into all of that. There's something we have to go away and look into. So at this point, I'm just saying high level, these are the things we actually need to do more work on, and we want to push those costs out or even avoid them altogether.
Just for clarity, Julie, sorry, not to be ahead of you.
No, it's really just highlighting the lack of enforcement.
Yeah, we've got some good books on that one. It would be unfair to say that would it be unfair to say that the change to direction in terms of wastewater discharge is what's caused the 103 to become 33?
The 103 made it 60. That made it 60.
It made it 60.
63 to 60.
Yeah.
The 60 to 33 is just getting right into every component of the project. So I'll give you an example. If we're doing an upgrade on a treatment plant now, we put a generator on it. So that comes at a cost, but it's actually an uplift in needing service because you don't have to have the generator to run the plant. You need it if the power goes out, but at the moment the power goes out and we don't have a generator there. So there's a lot of things that tend to be built into these projects because you want to make those uplifts and it's cost effective to do it at the same time. So it's more cost effective to build it at the same time from a project delivery perspective. But if you've got a deep fund and raise the money and rate the community, you look at it from a different perspective. So that's kind of what I'm doing about through what I'm saying. Is everything that's in this project actually necessary to meet the compliance requirement? So are we up-scoping these projects?
So sorry, I was just going to, so are you saying that 33 is without any of that up-scoping?
Yeah, so one of the big components in that 60 million was to replace that. So we've got two big main pump stations here and one pipeline across the river. So it's saying, as part of this project, we'll also replace the pump stations with bigger pumps and put another pipeline across to the plant. Well, at the moment, we don't have that and it's not needed for compliance. It will be needed in the future for growth, but what we know right at the moment is that we get a high rainfall, that volume going into the plant doubles and we're not having overflows and it's getting through the network. So that tells me there's quite a bit of capacity available. We can get on top of the stormwater without having to upgrade pumps and building. Like it's about $15 million for that part of the work.
It's just important to note in the context of the Federated Farmers letter to the regional council saying it was going to cost 110 million to sort two towns out, which was Alex and Clyde, due to the discharge. It's a savings of an estimated $43 million to be able to continue to discharge to river. Because I the number was 110 million out there, but an awful lot of that 110 million was not to do with the,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there's like 12 million for a calamity tank, so that's, you build basically a big concrete reservoir, it's like a swimming pool over there, so if something goes wrong, you can hold the wastewater in the tank. Well, we've just spent a fortune putting 80 hours storage in our 2 pump stations here in Alexandra, plus we've got days of storage out of Clyde, so you know, the calamity tank is in the future when growth starts to build up. You're probably going to build it, but not necessarily in this 10-year window. We've got more storage for holding stuff back than we've ever had before, but we're going to go a bit more again. So I look at it and say, well, we don't actually have to have that right for full compliance. We want it in the future, but not right now.
Well, a question though, you're talking about the calamity tanks. Seems to be, and water is an expensive issue and people want to be in that game. Well, you can build a 600,000 cubic dam on anywhere else for $1 million.
Yeah.
But yet we seem to be $10 million to build something the size of a swimming pool.
Yeah,
So is it a,
yeah, this isn't a gully.
yeah, but what I guess I'm saying, is it price because everyone in council leveraging water, is the people in the market we're dealing in reflecting the work?
Look, I can't really comment.
Have we got any on the benchmark costings and all that stuff again, so I guess I ask?
Yeah, well,
It seems to be.
these estimates are based on what cost of work has been in other places in New Zealand, where it's been built, so that,
Council.
yeah. The contract, the consultants who are doing the wastewater stuff are particularly good in providing some really good underlying information that I'm never getting the estimates from. So, just other updates on that. So the Cromwell nitrogen, that abatement notice has been, I think we've been compliant now for 15 months, and we're actually suggesting that project gets pushed out 2 years. It's actually going to cost more. So I left the 3.6 in, and this year we'll have to come back to council about whether we are going to carry it forward or spend it on something else and push something else out. But it's going to cost about 7 million, not the 3.6. And we are getting a capacity review done on the Cromwell plant, so that it's got membranes there, and all the growth happening at Cromwell, there's going to come a point in time where we're going to need more membrane banks and a bigger plant to get all that through. But I don't know what the time and what cost on that is at the moment, so I've just put some holding numbers in there, and I've got about that hold it in the wind sort of a number at this point in time. And Lake Roxburgh Village wastewater treatment site, we're really hoping that we will get that progressed soon. And so that has increased from 900,000 to 1.7K.
What was that increase?
Just as they take a number, double it, paying 30% almost ton, because that 900,000 was estimated in 2020.
Oh, right. Might as well have been last century.
Yeah, well, I guess that's right, but does some of that come back? That's what I'm talking about, that you had a budget perfectly good then, what's changed, the market's gone like that, and everything's going like that now.
Yeah.
Or do you just stick with that?
Well, apparently, and I'm being aware that Stacey said, the government believes that they're going to have the standardised wastewater treatment performance standards across New Zealand will enable these pit set plants to be built really cheaply and roll out cheaply across New Zealand, and the costs going to go down. So this is actually a pit set plant. So who knows, maybe the cost will come down, but
because
I'll be surprised.
We constantly hearing, well, we're going to have to budget this much for design. So go buy one off the box, one box off the shelf. Avoid it. If it works, and it might be one of those simple answers that's wrong, but it certainly seems to make sense.
This project's actually a really good example of those challenges, because we've spent $200,000 with bid nothing yet, just trying to get through the whole, looking at different options and the consenting processes. We've had to get a consent extent, a new consent issue for 5 years while we continue to work through what the options are that are comply with even standing.
Remind me how many households in Lake Roxburgh Village?
There's 50, but the good news is that there's another development proposal with 25.
Oh, okay.
So the big growth component.
There's the growth component. That's exciting. But yeah, $1.7 million for 50 toilets.
Yeah.
Should have trained as a plumber.
So our next slide forward.
You're fine.
So in terms of water, what is, so with water, there's a new word that they're using in all their presentations at the DIA at the moment, saying that the standards, that compliance upgrades should be proportionate. And I think that's reassuring, and there's some other words that they're adding into the legislation to say that they should be appropriate for the size and risk that issue. So
It's going to be anyway, hey?
yeah, so we've scaled back those as well, by significantly, I would say. So for Ranford and Peterborough, we've kind of moved trying to deal with every event that's going to happen and accepted that there could be some events where turbidity gets high and we won't be able to treat the water to the compliance levels, in which case they would get a boil water notice imposed during those high turbidity events. And we would have to try to manage them off reservoir storage and put water restrictions in place. So you'll notice that there has been water restrictions being put in place in the last few days because of been high turbidity events. So that avoids boil water notices. So we can run the reservoirs for longer. Naseby, I am still worried that that 2021 event hasn't actually been addressed yet, and my staff are all started since 2021, most of them, and they don't quite understand what the problem is. And I said, well, we're here at New Year.
You're working out the education as you go, that's what it is.
Yeah, like you do know the pain that we went through at that period. So that's still sitting in the back of my mind. So I think it still needs to be in that 10 years, but it would be putting another treatment line through to keep the capacity up and looking at the storage there. Omakau will still have the membrane plant in there, at a new site across the road somewhere. So it's not in a flood area, but that project initially included a brand new reservoir up Racecourse Road at a higher level to deal with pressure requirements that was around $3 million. So I pulled that part out. It's just the membrane plant. And Roxburgh, we do have an issue there that it's only got a single operational bore this side of the river. It's got sediment that comes through, so it means they've taken they've upsized the size of cartridge filter because it wouldn't get through it otherwise, which means it's now no longer technically compliant with the Water Services Act requirements. So you'll talk to the ROI around that. It still has UV. There is an alternative groundwater source available, but it has has a high hardness level. And our concern as a team is that if we could get them to find water, but they will hate it.
We've lived through that with Alexandra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good now though.
So we're going to go back to the drawing board and just see is there something we can do with the current sources. So Tomato ROI, the messaging has been promising around, and so that any town that's got less than 1,000 people in it, I'm assuming we will get away with not as high a spec on it.
The boil water notices just going to be a part of life in small towns, as they always have.
And yeah, they have, but like Naseby, that's why they go there, because it's a bit different and they don't want to pay astronomical rates to live in the holiday house when they've been quite happy to stay in Sprite.
So Judy, just remind me, the UV filtration is not enough for us anymore, is that correct?
Kills the protozoa, but they require a multi-barrier approach, so it usually comes with some sort of filtration and the UV, but they're not issuing compliance notices if you've just got UV. So for Peterborough, I think there's actually a package plant that they're looking at that at much lower cost, but it won't operate in those high turbidity events. So you're running off reservoir storage.
I guess just talking about being facetious here, would it not be cheaper for us just to make sure, just provide every single home with a UV filter? And then it's on each individual homeowner to change their filters.
We have looked at that, and it's legally it's not on them, it stays on council.
Okay, so it's a legal requirement, because at the end of the day, you know, that would be a much, dare I say it, if we get a few.
How does that work for the properties that are on, that's a condition of the resource consent? Because we're not responsible for those ones, are we?
No, but they're not connected to the town supply.
Can we just establish this is no longer a town supply?
You go, take them off our books.
We've scaled it right back, it's sitting at about 1.6 million, I think now, but,
But that's a crazy irony that we're having to spend this kind of money when every home it'd be cheaper to provide every home with a
How
unit.
would that work if, like a lot of those houses that are on that as part of their resource consent comes from a private supply, if that private supply folds and then becomes a council supply?
so, that's a risk to all of this program. I have made no provision for picking up private supplies. And at some point, you're gonna have to think through some policy around who pays in the heavens. Because you are required to pick them up, but you're not required to pay for the upgrades required. You can put that back as a cost on those properties.
That's it, gotta go.
And that's been what we've kind of been using to deter some people from just handing over.
Is it under 50? Is it 50?
You're 50 users, not properties. 50 users,
25.
connections.
25.
25.
Yeah. 25 connections.
Because the Turrill was about 17, now it's gone to 40, and then it becomes a tricky issues.
Reverse connection.
Kelly Ray has 25 connections, so bigger than 25, no. It's but it's, we've scaled it right back to something that's.
That's good.
Affordable. But it does still cost money, across 10 years, it's costs money. Our next slide.
Just before you leave the wild growth, this might come up here.
So, this is just a lighter moment. So, hydraulic models are like, having the lights turned on in the dark for us when we're trying to do growth planning. So, our hydraulic models apply to the water pipe, the pipe networks in the reservoirs or in the pump stations as well. So, without hydraulic models, it's like you're driving blind. We literally, unless there's a problem, we don't necessarily know there's going to be a capacity constraint in the network. And so with all this high growth in Cromwell and the Minster, if something goes wrong, we're going to have a problem. And with hydraulic models, we're really on fire. So the next slide, Wayne. So they really matter. So where we're at with these is new hydraulic models now are being prepared for water and wastewater for the Cromwell and Alexandra Clyde areas. We received the Cromwell model and the report regarding that in late 2023. So we have really robust forward planning around what the needs are going to be in the Cromwell water network, and that's been verified with Logan as well. And there's specific projects in the plan for those things. Alexandra and Clyde, we had an initial presentation on that model 2 weeks ago, so we haven't had time yet to build that in properly, but there were issues we knew that existed in the network. We were getting some customer complaints, and it's basically validated that what we thought were problems are problems, and that they need to be addressed within the 10-year window. The wastewater models aren't going to be ready until May 2025, which means we cannot build them into this program at this point. We're having to still do a lot of guesswork. So there's numbers in that budgets that just are placeholders with an expectation that when the models come in, they're going to tell us that we're going to have some capacity issues within the pipe network, particularly around Cromwell, I would expect. The models have modelled what the Plan Change 19 zoning is. So we provided, they're providing the planning for capacity to meet those zoning requirements. We are not planning for capacity for private plan changes that don't fit the council's plan. And there is potentially going to come a point in time where people might do a private plan change and get something through, where we might say, yeah, well, we're still not going to connect you because we need that capacity for the zoned land that has been approved. So that is happening around New Zealand a lot more now, but we're not quite in that position yet. But it would be, what I'm saying is if it's included in Plan Change 19, we can be planning to service it. If it's not in there, we are not planning.
So do we tell developers and tell people that before they go down that track, or is it?
when they come in with a private plan change that we haven't made any provisions to service it and we.
But I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying, if we talk a 30-year plan, are we advertising the fact that at the moment, our network, our infrastructure can only take up to plan change 19, and beyond that, don't come to us as an independent developer because we haven't got capacity for it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm saying, are we selling that story? Because that's a bit like saying you're only allowed to have 400 sheep on your hill block, and at the moment you've got 600. There's no growth there.
To answer this question, we are planning for the future growth areas in Plan Change 19. So there is more than sufficient capacity of land to meet 30 years of growth. You know, if somebody decides they want to put a new village like Kiri Valley Road, for example, that's going to be a problem. And someone will have to pay for it, and they might have to pay a lot more for upgrade infrastructure than just the development contributions.
Yeah, that's all part of us planning, you have the town's growth.
Yeah.
The key thing about that is that that's been the situation for some time, really. It's just that we had the capacity in the past that we've probably enabled some land to be changed in zoning, and it's taken the water from available supply. But over the years, that's become less and less available. And we gave a very clear message through Plan Change 19 and Julie's evidence in particular, saying that, you know, we're planning for 30 years growth and Plan Change 19 for residential growth, and we have got 30 years of infrastructure planning that backs that up. So in some areas we said, well, it might come in the future, but until it can be serviced, it's not going to happen. And the reality is, I think if anybody wants to service a new area, expand Lowburn or Bannockburn for argument's sake, then they better have some deep pocket, some shallow pockets with lots of money, because they're going to have to spend a lot of money doing some infrastructure.
Who did the infrastructure pass? It would be the community boards or councils then, though, did they, in your day?
I think we built stuff for people to come and more, but a more recent, well, back in the Clyde Dam days, I don't think it was about the future growth, it was about the here and now. And as growth has hit us, I would have said that we've used up the capacity we had and now are more deliberately planning for the future than we ever used to. Would that be fair, Julie?
Yeah, it is. And like that, I'm just going to show you some pictures of what we get from the hydraulic models now, but they really help us focus in on where we'll have issues or have. But yeah, they don't tell us exactly when we need to do things. So they model 3 horizons and tell us you've got a problem now, you're going to need to deal with it in the short-term future. They give us, here's what it'll look like in 10 years where you're going to have problems. So you probably, you want to be programming work before you hit that problem in 10 years, and then the 30-year horizon. So I don't know exactly which year in the 10 years, and they don't either, because there's a whole lot of assumptions have to happen around where the private landowners are going to do the development first. So like if we take Cromwell, for example, I don't know if Bannockburg's going to suddenly go off gangbusters and Hyses land. You know, we make some assumptions around what might happen and that it'll be reasonably evenly spread, and we'll have to do things at certain times. So that one year when it goes way high, and we might see that apply with Muntatown, for example. That Muntatown suddenly fills up in the next 2 or 3 years. We'll have to reprioritize some projects around.
When you talk about the growth and exactly that, Muntatown versus Bannockburn versus Lowburn, they're all going to be developments. And is there a way of someone we want to understand the development contribution? Because that's the key.
Yeah, that's why getting these budgets stuff is, because if I don't have the project in the budget, it doesn't get included in the calculation for the development.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a massive thing, way I read.
So that's why these hydraulic models really matter, because if the developer's going to challenge us, we've got really good evidence to show this.
Particularly the lady in Ranfiller who's got the wee house that she just bought from Auckland or whatever they've come down with, shouldn't be having to worry about the development growth in Bannockburn because they've paid for their infrastructure when they bought it. That development should be paying for its future growth, and there will be an element of upgrade which the rest of the ratepayer uses. But to me, it should be a very simple system that when the growth goes forward, pays for existing plant and development upgrades the plant that's going to be used in the future.
And it's certainly the intention.
Yeah. And depreciation will replace it once that's all gone through.
Slide.
Change the subject.
Dog's lunch.
So this is the slide from the presentation we got 2 weeks ago. This is the water model for Alexandra. What it will show us is, you know, these are the areas where we're going to have problems, and those numbers then will reference a table that tell us this is what the problem will be, and here's what you're going to need to do to address that. Bearing in mind that this is across 30 years, so the red ones are sort of more going to be more pressing, so we're programming those sorts of things into the first 10 years. The oranges, you know, will be 10 years plus out. And so if you look at that one, then we do a bit of a reality check. There's like 37 there. That's the water pipe that goes down to the wastewater treatment plant, and there might be one house off that. We would look at that and say, oh, yeah, it's our site. We're not too worried if the pressure's not amazing. We're prepared to take a reduction in the service sort of stuff.
D9, because that's relatively new, is that size of pipe or is it just this distance from the?
No, it's the pipes that feed down into that area. So the networking pipes that themselves will be all right, but the servicing of that area is going to have a problem if we don't build the pipe that we proposing to build along Dunstan Road. There's some upgrades that are required to feed into that area. We'll get enough water.
The exact issue there is there's only a single feed of the trunk main into that whole area, and once all that new development is built up, we won't have firefighting capacity. That is upspending, so it needs another connection.
So when that resource consent went in for that area 20 years ago, did we not anticipate that one feed wasn't going to be enough?
They only have to build the pipes within their network, and the development contributions cover the upgrades to the existing networks.
Okay.
And so these are existing network upgrades that are required to feed growth.
So we by law can't say to them, well, okay, you're going to build 60 more pipes in D9, but we've only got a 20 more pipe in D12, you're going to fix that as well, you're not going ahead. We can't say that.
Well, what you tend to find is they might need to build a pipe that's going to address D9 and D13 sort of stuff, but one developer ends up, it's like, if you think about it in a roading context, it's like saying to council, oh, you're coming along now building doing a little development down McNulty Road, you need to build a roundabout and a state highway because the consequential growth over a period of time now means there's a problem here. So them on their own haven't created a problem that's consequential growth over a period.
You're only adding 10 cars to the 100 that are already going through.
Yeah, which is why development contributions are used to fund projects that we deliver that continue to service consequential growth over time.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, next slide, Wayne. So then this is the more detail that we get, and Cromwell water model has been completed now. That's telling us, you know, we're going to have issues in the Rickenvale area and down in Bannockburn, and they'll go down to telling us these existing pipes that are not that old that are going to need to be made. You're going to have to put a bigger pipe or second pipe in, or you've got a pipe here, but it's quite an old pipe. Our recommendation is that you do a renewal on that pipe and replace it with a bigger pipe.
At the present, they're ours.
That's all our network. So
We've put them in and now we're gonna have to re-put them in because 25 years ago, we never saw growth.
well, Ripponvale wasn't even our scheme.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But when they did the Ripponvale scheme, they weren't told to put the pipe in for any growth, potential growth, it was just to service what they had.
And 25 years ago, I don't think anybody anticipated the level of growth that's taken off. So.
And that there lies the problem. We're now picking up the growth component for the next 30 years, and that wasn't in the last. We're dealing with a 50-year crisis.
Okay, next slide, Wayne. So, and then it goes, like this has been a greater level of detail where it will tell us you need to build an 800 cubic metre reservoir and you need a dedicated main up to the reservoir and a fallen main away from the reservoir to service the land in that area. We've got problems. And next slide.
So can I just while you're on that, friend Julie, can I ask, when you're doing your thinking and calculations on this, do you go, there's going to be a main trunk line for cyclists coming through from Queenstown in 2 years' time, and what's that going to mean to the growth projections?
No, so we base all our planning on population growth projections, which we do every 3 years, and we've actually just done a recheck because the Statistics New Zealand updated the last census data. And so it's based on, we base our modelling on a high growth profile rather than the median, which we use.
The reality there is, with that bike trail going through, there's going to be a lot more people, be it a campground or a motel or whatever sort of an operation. There in 5 years' time is going to be at least requests for significant development there, and requests hard to argue against, because there's going to be a whole lot of people coming down that bike trail that will do respect.
I know, right now, but not be unit.
There you go.
So we've got this land that's been zoned there for development. And so we're basing it on, this is the land that's been zoned, and here's the population uplift that's forecast. And we take a high population for this planning, which isn't the medium scenario council adopts for its other things, because we know that once you put a pipe in, going back and putting a bigger pipe in is really expensive. So we take a lower risk approach, and that's where we
basing that on higher usual resident population, whereas there is going to be an unforecast, if we don't realise what's coming, temporary resident population.
Yeah, so the peak, we use peak day, we don't use usual resident.
Okay, fine, that's what I want to do.
We use a high growth profile on peak day.
Sorry, even that peak day is not going to take into account the 85,000 people a year that did the Dunstan Trail. There is going to be a huge number of people suddenly in a couple of years wanting to pitch up tent. Dylan.
So the tourism team have done some forecasting for the cycle trail, which we have got with the organisation, so that can play into this. But it's not massively different on a day because it's spread over a year. I'm saying people per day at a max, it's about 500 people.
Yeah.
On its peak day. So it's not huge in terms of water.
But if you have 500 people on a peak day and 10% of them stay, that's 50 more people, which for the size of Bannockburn is actually, and your peaks over summer, because forget about winter. But still, I still think, anyway, you've obviously taken it into account. That's what I want to get.
We do factor in elements of local risk understanding into this. So they might say, a 500 to 800 kilometre reservoir, we might say we'll build 800, but we'll flatten down that ground to the second reservoir side of it immediately.
Because what I don't want to see is a pipe go in, and 2 years after the pipe's gone and somebody's making a plan change to put in a big operation, and we go, oh gee, sorry.
You have to get 30 years of growth happening really quickly for that to happen. So probably, and then it's not, it's based on the Cromwell growth projections, and Cromwell's had high growth consistently. So, Highlands going in, the other cycle trail going in, all of those things, that line's already high. We're saying there's still things happening that will continue to keep growing.
As long as it's taken into account, that's all.
Yeah, I know that roundabout in Franklin with the regional transport is out of a 30-year plan, they fulfilled it in 2.5 years. Like a real risk to me when I drive up that way is that it's the same as development contribution. Have you got your growth and doubled it? Because if I'm going to be here in the next couple of boards coming in 10 or 15 years time, we're going to go and do it. I mean, it's not your fault if we don't get it right, but is there any indication this growth going to get out of control again? It's just what we've got.
I'm confident that we're building enough growth into this. That's not something that worries me at all. We've got significant growth building. It might say 182.1 internal diameter pipe, when actually the pipe size might only come in at 200. Yeah. So you've already got a bigger pipe. There's a whole lot of things that we do. We round it up. We use kind of growth forecasts, and we're pretty conservative, but we don't want to be building too big and costing more money either.
True, so find out.
There's a trade-off there. And so we try to make sure we have capacity to add on rather than build big right from the start. Next.
Components of the nuclear can use the.
So So what, we're just talking about that at the moment. So as one of the requirements under the Water Services Delivery Plan and also the Rate Development contributions is that we draw the lines on the maps of where what our service areas are. And so we will be bringing those to council for sign off, but we do really need to nail those down, because what happens is we'll say we're servicing a line to here, and then a rural property will decide they're going to do something and they're going to hook onto the end of the network, and then another that their neighbour decides they'll do the same. And suddenly you have all these properties on the line with no pressure, and it's affecting everybody else. So we're going to have to be a bit tougher at saying no to some of that creep that seems to happen. Because people get a resource consent on the basis that they can achieve a water supply on their site. They get their consent, they then start doing and then later on they go to do a connect and drill a hole for water or whatever and find out there's no water there.
And is there a treatment component included as well?
So the treatment plant upgrades will include growth components. And you'll see even on my list, sometimes you'll see, like for Lake Dunstan water supply, there's a point in time when we're going to have more membrane banks, and so that's in the program outside. That's in year 11 to 13. So this next slide, please. Oh, yes, so this it gets into real detail about what the issue's going to be, and you don't have to read that. This is kind of showing you the level of detail we get from the modelling. Sorry for one. So in terms of their budget considerations, I can put projects out and scale down the scope, provided we do a few things. We need to reduce water demand because that frees up capacity for growth. And when we did it initially, we got 10 years of extra capacity in the primary network because we've got a 30% reduction. So our current volumetric charge is 60 cents a cubic metre. It has been that way for, over 10 years. It's never had inflation even applied to it. The UOC keeps getting increased, but the volumetric charge is staying the same. It's way too low compared to other councils, and too low for it to really influence behaviour anymore. So there's kind of a level of complacency around it. So we would have to increase it by 3 or 4 times to be comparative to other councils' volumetric charge rates. I believe that it's likely to be a consultation item about how you increase the charge, because you might want to phase it over time. You might want to go from 60 cents to $1.20 to $1.80 style, but you need to get it up around $1.80 to $2.40.
Just to back up what Julie said, I just put into Microsoft's artificial intelligence what the average is, and it comes up the average volumetric charge, blah, blah. For example, in Central Otago, the volumetric charge is the lowest amongst councils with more than 90% metered. Watercare is $2, Tauranga is $3.40, Whangarei $3.21, Carterton $3, Nelson $2, Whakatane $1.77, and Tasman $1.55. We are way up.
I mean, with respect,
Sorry, Carol, Nigel, I'll go next.
Sally, Nigel, Neil.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nigel.
I struggle to see why that should be a consultation item.
And Neil.
However, you need to go and compare that to what they're charging for their fixed rate as well. And for those that were around when we set these volumetric chargings, we actually had to push the price up because it was even cheaper when you just worked out the cost of actually producing the water. And you had the situation where you've got to have that, but like your electricity supply network, you pay a daily charge to be connected to the scheme and the cost of running it, and then you pay for the water that's produced. That's the cheap part, I thought, unless that's changed markedly from when we first did this. So we just, I get it's a low volumetric charge, but if you're going to increase the volumetric charge, then you're going to decrease the connection charge, I'd imagine, unless we're going to start funding something new, or that's, you know, obviously the cost structure will change with new assets coming on, so the depreciation will be different. But that's why it's like it is, and that's how it got there. So unless we've stopped doing the calculations to say that our model's wrong, and there's a better one, I can't speak for how those other councillors doing it. That might be the true cost, but my memory of it all was that was the true cost. Or in fact, it was more than the actual cost of the water that was used when you had the infrastructure in place.
So, I'll just ask that, so we will be coming back to you with a separate presentation or possibly both. If you get really technical people, analytical people in this, they try to break it down to what's the operating cost that's variable, and then the guts of it is that the volumetric charge isn't around we use less electricity, therefore it drops by 2 cents per cubic metre or whatever. It's around the behaviour and the pushing out of the CapEx projects is typically what it's around. And it'll also matter when we go for our resource consent renewals, because we're going to have to demonstrate that we are managing water use well. So, and you did right though, Neil, what's been happening here is our UHC charge goes up every year. So it hasn't even been based on any kind of formula. It's just been that.
I think that's the problem, is we've lost that connection we used to have.
Yeah, finance people like UACs because they know they're getting this much money in. Volumetric charges that the customer actually has the ability to influence what they get paid. And what we know, what the research that's been done in the infrastructure commission actually has some good information on this, is volumetric charges benefit low income households because it's not low income households who use huge volumes of water.
And our consumption rate here is really high too, which means, you know, it's a cost to council, which you have to treat all that water and people are just using tons of it.
It's been 60 cents for.
Well, it's the fair since from 2010 for about probably 6 years, and it's been 60 cents since then.
20 cents. Right. And so then you're getting a $20 bill, it's costing nothing more to read the meter and see the bill than what you pay for that service. So,
And amongst that, we've got to look at our own usage too.
oh, yes, so what I would say, this is really going to impact our parks and reserves tender. But I would say the advantage there is it does spread the cost of water a little bit more wider because parks and reserves is rated across rural properties as well as single properties. So, and it's been hard to get parks teams sometimes to really get serious about what their alternatives might be using power supplies, but this is probably.
There was a person in Manfleet who was K-lining their paddocks with the town water supply.
Yeah, we could see that properly on that water consumption.
There also may need to be conversations about whether we water everything that we water at the moment. If we can't get on the boards quickly enough.
Yeah.
So
the other thing we need to do is chase some leaks as well, get better on the.
And let's also not lose sight of the fact that when we brought these volumetric charges in, it saw a significant and not an insignificant decline in the amount of water being used. So it achieved that. And I think where we're at now, it sounds like that we've just lost track of how our financial model for water charges has worked. And we can make it anything we like, but it's got to be something that, as someone said, it's got to be an incentive also not to use so much. And if we've let this run away on ourselves, then we can fix that. But it doesn't mean that $2.70 in Tauranga is the right number we should be aiming at, is what I'm certainly mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just to demonstrate.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this is quite a technical operating, so I can't see the rationale why you suggest that we would consult on it, Judy.
Oh, yeah, look, that was really, I did get it.
It might not be on, but I think you would have to have it in your consultation document because it's going away from an existing practice and it could be a reasonably significant step.
And that's fine. So
and the other interesting thing too is if you read the literature that's come out of DIA, financial sustainability does not include affordability. So the new regulator that will set the pricing mechanism will set it on financial sustainability, but it might not be linked to affordability.
My view.
Next
slide, Wayne. So, wastewater, obviously in wastewater, like it's in water, you're sending water out, wastewater, you've got water coming in. You know, that we have high levels of stormwater infiltration on our network. And so, like I know, as I think was mentioned before, in Alexandra at high rainfall, we get double the amount of water going through the treatment plant. So I know we can cope with that capacity at the moment within the network, but it also tells me half of that could be used for growth. If we would want, probably not half, but at least half to a quarter of that amount could be freed up for growth if we've got obviously water infiltration. And the CAP report, compliance report going to the next council meeting. We're going to hear about FOG at Alexandra's Wastewater Treatment Plant. So FOG is fats, oils and grease. We don't have lots of acronyms in the water space, but FOG's one of them. And at the moment, there's an issue with fats, oils and grease going into the Alexandra treatment plant from somewhere in the network. It's probably a trade waste issue where a business is not disposing of their oils the right way, and that will affect the compliance of the plant if it carries on over a period of time. At the moment, we issue trade licenses, trade waste licenses. We don't do any follow-up or monitoring or anything. The property changes hands, the business gets sold or whatever, there's no transfer of trade waste licenses. The new property owners won't be aware of what their requirements are. We don't have a bylaw to do any enforcement. So we do need to get on top of this. This was one of the cans we kept open. We thought we would transition another entity, but better management of that trade waste could help with that compliance. So that's obviously, that's that operational role that I mentioned to get on top of it. And, you know, at the moment, we don't have hydraulic models for wastewater, so we are guessing, but we do know we have an issue of low burn, so there's a project in the budgets to deal with that. I mucked around with timing and things all up. Like every time I move a project out, another one comes forward, so I think getting too fixated in exactly what year a project sits in is not actually a lot of value, because they'll move around as we're delivering, depending on what's happening. Next slide, Brent. So for operational costs, we are looking at a consequential OpEx cost coming through from the new treatment processes because UV uses quite a bit of electricity. So electricity is their second highest cost in the operating space for water. We're currently budgeted at $707,000 a year, but electricity for water, that goes up to 804 in year 2 and then 860 in year 3 as these plants come online. So I do have a project in both water and wastewater to start looking at, you know, how can we run this more cost effectively from an electricity perspective, and also, you know, are there alternative energy things like, is it worth us investing in solar panels on some sites to reduce our costs of electricity, and what would the payback be on that? And we've also just got a new electricity contract, so I'm not exactly sure yet what the implications of that are compared to what our budget level increase was. We are going to have an increase in our plant operating costs, and effectively that means bringing in another operator into the network because more treatment processes will require time to be allocated to it. We've made no provision for fluoridation. Right? That's a risk that water services delivery plan requires us to identify if we have made this requirement or not. That we could get told by the government we have to do it, but I haven't hoped that there. I put in $40,000 into the operating budget to hydrant marking because that seems to have fallen off the radar, and they're absolutely shocking, the markings on the hydrants out there. So we used to do them annually, do a third across, so every 3 years the hydrant marking got redone, and it was done between road and water, and I think the charges and staff was just fallen off the radar. Hasn't been done, and that budget for that's kind of got absorbed into the increases in operation costs that have been up.
Which is paying.
Yeah. So I haven't got an exact cost. I've kind of done it under the
I'm wondering that from the grant.
And meter reading, we have, with growth, we get more meters that we have to read, so it costs us more to read the meters. And also, if we're going to increase volumetric charges, we should probably be doing through reading around too.
Can we look at putting in digital meters in new subdivisions? Because also I think there'd be efficiencies because you don't have to send someone out, but I think it's so easier to find where the leak is as well with those.
Yeah, so we've been looking at that, and because we're overdue for a big renewal program, so we'll be bringing our report to you regarding that. And we probably will at some point soon require them to go into subdivisions. But currently, if we were to go and replace meters, it's not a very cost-effective solution, and it costs a lot more to put in and actually to run than analog meters. And so we actually had rationale doing some cost-benefit analysis around it. And the numbers don't. We would have to, if we were going to do it on the existing meters as we're replacing them, we would have to almost double the cost of the CapEx provision for that, from about 2 million to 5 million to put the money in double cost.
Is there other efficiency? So no.
So how do they read them now? Put the lid up and read the numbers.
Someone goes around and reads them, knocks them in.
Like a job for instance. On our pivots and that, they got to be within 30 metres of them and use a Bluetooth device to.
But if you've got 10,000 of them to replace, and it costs twice as much to replace 10,000 with the analog meters, and then the cost saving provision doesn't seem to actually stack up to the increase.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that might be something that the water services entities take on.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, we might stick with the status quo and just go for an extra meter.
We're thinking that because we've got a big bulk to go out and replace, and they're failing, and so sometimes we get 0 reads when we go and memory reads, so we need to get through those on quickly. But we're thinking that as the newer developments come up for their renewals, that's when you would phase it in. Yeah, recently. There'd be a lot of risk and something going wrong and not being able to breathe them for us. It's quite significant. And the experience of our councils who have been doing this has not been reassuring.
Always good to learn from others' mistakes.
Yeah. Next slide. And just, we are re-tendering our contract that later this year, so we won't know the exact costs of that until around March, but we don't anticipate that there'll be much change in costs of that. So there's actually a reduction by picking out the Cromwell nitrogen of 60, was 40,000 off next year, $63,000 off. If you remember, that had a high energy cost to it. But we once again need to review the actual electricity costs against what we had budgeted for, and we've got a new contract. And then other big thing is sludge. So sludge, last year, because we had such horrific cost increases and we were trying to scale them back, I pulled out the desludging budget of $500,000 per annum. So what we've found out is that desludging seems to make a really big impact on our compliance levels, and we can push out these things like nitrogen upgrades and that if we keep on top of the sludge management. So Redford is actually quite urgent. We need to get the sludge out of the ponds to do the wetland reinstatement, how we've been told, in order to lift the abatement notice. So, we might come back to you and propose that there's some income from some wastewater sites that you might want to use that to get on top of this desludging backlog that we've got. Because once we've got Ranfurly, Cromwell and Naseby done, you'd be looking at phasing it out, do them every 10 years, each site every 10 years. So it's
so that's all the abatement notices that hasn't been cleaned out.
No, well, we've got to do some other work there, but we can't do the other work until we desludge the ponds because they need desludging, and the sludge is coming from the pond.
You talk about plantings and in consultation with Lee, we're on plantings, we've got Jack and Minitata sitting there that would love to be involved in.
We'll keep them involved, Stu, but the guy said, the expert said plants are just all going to die.
So we're going to plant, they're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, that's funny.
No, desludge ponds.
Judy, can you give us an update on where we are with land sales for the the redundant Bannockburn site, land site and the Mutton Town site. So I just-
Bannockburn, we need to chase that up and get it moving again. It seems to be kind of been gone into a bit of no man's land, that one. We've got a willing buyer and a willing seller, so it's just a case of answering a couple of questions and getting it moving. So we need to,
Do we not have that estimated sales price budgeted against something?
it was back in 2018 when we did the LPP, and we thought we were going to get and use it and offset that loan costs for clothes.
And the property in Mutton Down?
So Louise is in the room. So I think we're just working through what an appropriate value for the land will be now.
So those two properties together represent how much money? Estimated?
Nigeria, because these costs move around, but yeah, I need to find out.
The roof sides are sitting inactive.
Yeah. I think I'm just about in a nice slot in my operation gracefully. Next slide. So in the management, there's obviously that role for enforcement. At some point, we're going to have a conversation around development engineer on their services, because we have a recalculation engineer in our team, and the development's got ramping up so much that he's spending all his time on development. Development's actually employed us to do, and we can cost recover that from the developers. We do have an expectation of significantly increased reporting requirements, particularly around wastewater performance to Tomato ROI. We are going to be required to do wastewater management plans for every site as part of these new performance standards the government's bringing out. And then when you've got 15 sites and you've got 15 management plans, they have a high expectation around the timeframes of reviewing that as well. So it becomes a full-time job developing and updating these plans. So I expect to put that in from around year 3, so I think the next couple of years. And with all that increased CapEx projects, there's potential that we will need another project manager to deliver a sustained program. So that will go into year 3 and that's been CapEx funded. And then we're going to have to add in to compare the cost of the status quo and the CCO setup and running costs. So we don't actually know what they are yet, but they won't be insignificant. That's my nice slide.
Yeah. Perfect now on time, Julie. I'm impressed.
We might like to talk though.
Start shot, which I mean, we've called it out pretty well as we've gone along. Is there anything to add? Questions, councillors?
Cartridge filters, membrane filters.
No, they're not. They're many messages of cartridges. There's somebody to explain to the difference.
Membranes are 10 times more expensive.
Yeah, it's a level of filtration and what will you take when you're not moving cartridge filtration is more the removal of the sediment and solid in there, but the membrane filtration will have a compliance measurement in terms of the moving. Does either system have a cartridge and a membrane?
I run all the other. Cartridge is much cheaper than membranes. Cartridge doesn't deal with a lot of issues. And so if you have bore water, that's nice and clean and pure from an aquifer, you'd probably get away with a cartridge. But if you have surface water sources or water that's coming basically through an infiltration gallery beside a surface water source, you're more likely to need to go up to higher levels.
Crumbles up goes having a cartridge.
Yeah, because we're taking from that source.
And then all the systems treated for chlorine as well.
Everything's chlorinated, so you have to have residual chlorine within your network, so if you get any kind of issue within the network, the bugs are dying in the network as well.
All right. Thank you, Julie and water team. It's enlightening and uplifting as ever. Certainly enlightening. Uplifting. Something that has been massive savings. Thank you for the money that's created that. Absolutely.
And I just say that doesn't come without some level of risk, but I think that it's at a level that Peter feels comfortably signed that this was this delivery plan meets the government's
Legally do. But the interesting thing about local water done well, it's something to be aware of too, and it was something in the last government before, is in this next 9-year LTP, water will cease at some stage and we won't show it. And let's just say it's at some point in time, we'll go into something and we won't represent it. And that's something, we'll know that answer by the time we land the LTP.
Sometimes again. All right, let's break for lunch. We'll be back at 1 o'clock.